Hello and welcome to the Weekly Stuff Podcast with Jonathan Lack
and Sean Chapman.
We are here, as always, to talk about stuff, this week being sort of a grab bag episode. We intended to come back last week and do another episode, because we have a bunch of stuff on the docket, but Sean was out of town.
Yeah, it was spring break.
Yeah, you know.
And I needed a break.
I needed
to just get the fuck out.
Yeah.
Play a lot of a certain video game that I'll talk about.
Yeah, I needed a break too. I had these kind of high ambitions for spring break where it's like, I'm going to write this term paper, and I'm going to write that term paper, and I'm going to read this book. And
it's like I'm going to read ahead in all my classes. Yeah. No, I didn't do anything.
I just played, and I needed it. I mean, I would have kind of gone insane if I didn't take a break, I think.
Yeah.
So that's good. That's what it's for. And now I'm facing a very, very busy April.
Yeah, that's the way it should be. You just, run your life into the fucking ground by refusing to live responsibly. It's worked out for me so far. Yeah.
Anyway, let's go ahead and talk about what we're going to talk about today, Sean. Last time on the show, we discussed that the Persona 3, the movie number 2, Midsummer Night's Dream Blu-ray was coming out with the special import version for North America that has English subtitles. So we got that in. We were planning on talking about it. We just, right now, don't quite have the time to watch that movie and give it the attention it deserves, in part because there's enough stuff on today's show that we don't need to go into it just yet. Mm-hmm. So, I think we're going to table that for a little bit. We will come back to that in next week's show, and there will be a show next week, definitely. We have the time, and we really do want to watch that movie.
Yeah, definitely.
But I want to give it the time it deserves. So that means we're going to have everything else on today's show, which should mean, in one part, you get like 2 episodes in 2 weeks, and not one episode that's like 7 hours long.
Yeah.
Which is good. So let's see, what kinds of stuff do we have today, Sean? Sort of odds and ends of gaming news, things like developments with the PlayStation 4, big news about Halo 5 and certain Nintendo games, some movie and TV stuff. And then more importantly, I think this is going to be more of a kind of random stuff kind of episode. Yeah. So I got the new 3DS. I'm going to talk about that.
Yes.
You got Bloodborne.
Yes.
The video game sensation.
I've played a lot of that game. I haven't quite beat it, but I'm pretty close.
All right, so you're going to talk about Bloodborne. I finally, after 5 months and 75 hours, beat Persona Q, Shadow of the Labyrinth.
Congratulations, Jonathan.
Going to talk a little. It did feel like an accomplishment, but we are going to talk about that a little bit later on. For now, I want to switch what we have on the outline, Sean. Let's make that kind of stuff the topic.
All right.
So we'll get to that a little later. Let's talk about some of these little pieces of news items that have come out in the last week. Let's start with movie and TV stuff, because there's just not a lot of it.
Yeah, okay.
And we should say movie season is kind of going to start ramping up this weekend, because Furious 7 comes out on Friday.
Right.
I have not been this excited for a movie in so long. I was watching Hulu earlier today, and they turned on the Furious 7 trailer, and I had to just kind of look away, because I want to see that movie so bad.
Yeah.
It looks so good.
Yeah, that's the franchise that I want to jump into at some point. But I don't know. I do enjoy looking at it, admiring it from afar, enjoying the trailers,
But they're so good, and this one has been getting nothing but positive reception, except from people who hate fun, and I'm just, I am psyched for this. And then, after that, we're going to get Avengers 2, and we're going to get that crazy-looking Mad Max movie.
Yes.
And lots of other good stuff, so...
And we're going to get a bunch of trailers that everyone's talking about, that there's trailers coming as well.
So let's talk about one of those trailers.
Okay.
One of the big trailers this week was for Spectre, the new James Bond movie coming this November. Hopefully. They're still shooting that movie, and I'm really curious if they can get that out on time. But anyway, the James Bond movies are not effect-heavy, so I think it'll be fine. But yeah, so Spectre...
I hear he turns into a robot and he's CG for most of the movie, so...
That'd be crazy.
It's a little bit effects heavier.
He's now played by Andy Serkis.
Exactly, yeah.
No, but, I'm a huge James Bond fan. I love that series, and I think they've been on mostly a creative role as of late. The second Daniel Craig movie, Quantum of Solace, not a great movie, but if you look at Casino Royale, and especially at Skyfall...
Yeah, Skyfall was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a huge James Bond dude. I've seen a couple of the movies, and I've liked most of the ones I've seen, but... Yeah, Skyfall was really fucking good.
Skyfall's really fucking good, and this is the same creative team, basically, that did that movie. Same writer, same director, Sam Mendes. Different cinematographer. This is Hoyte van Hoytema this time, but it looks just as gorgeous as the last one. The cinematography in this trailer is insane.
And then even in the trailer, if they make direct reference to Skyfall and, kind of the events of Skyfall in the trailer. So it's interesting that, James Bond movies usually don't have direct connections with one another so much. So it's kind of cool that... this seems to be building off of some of the stuff developed in Skyfall.
Absolutely, and that's what I wanted to talk about with this trailer. That's what excites me about it to some degree. That seems like a new kind of frontier for them. And actually, this is something they were trying to build in the Daniel Craig era early on. Quantum of Solace is a completely direct sequel to Casino Royale. It picks up literally where Casino Royale ends. We start with the next scene, and it just goes from there. And that's kind of part of the problem. It's like too closely linked to that movie. And then with Skyfall, I think they kind of wisely decided to make that more of a standalone entry. Although I think it's kind of informed by the character development Bond had had under Daniel Craig that far. So the Spectre trailer starts with a direct reference to Skyfall, but it also has direct references to Quantum of Solace and Casino Royale, because the guy he goes to visit, who he's going to kill, and he's got like the eyes poked out as the creepy old dude in the cabin. Yeah. That is the bad guy from the end of Casino Royale, who he shoots and then says, the name's Bond, James Bond, and is then the main villain in Quantum. Well, not the main villain in Quantum of Solace, but one of the kind of headlining villains in that film.
Yeah, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, and I don't think have you seen that film?
I've seen Casino Royale. I've not seen Quantum of Solace.
Okay, yeah. So you might have missed that, because he is more prominent in Quantum of Solace than he is in Casino Royale. Yeah. So really, it seems like they're trying to bring this whole Bond era together in this movie, and that's interesting. As you say, they've been pretty much continuity averse in the past. We go from On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which ends with Bond cradling his wife's dead body in the car, to Diamonds Are Forever, the next film, where I think he goes and finds Blofeld and throws him into a vat of molten iron or something. And,
James Bond. Yeah.
Yeah. Continuity nut. And then in the next film, he's in a blaxploitation movie. So, and it's a different actor in all three of those films. Yes. So these things happen. But I think some of the work they've been putting in seems to be paying off. And of course, the big thing with Spectre, as the title will tell you, is they have actually not had the rights to Spectre, the organization, at Eon Productions since the 60s, or the 70s maybe. It's been in a big legal battle. They finally got the rights back a couple of years ago, and they're going full steam ahead with it now. They can use Blofeld again. They can use Spectre as an organization. And if you know the Bond mythology from the books and the early movies, that is the big organization he goes up against. But they've literally been legally barred from using any of that for decades now. So that's why the movie is called Spectre. It's not a great title, but they are so eager to use it.
Yeah, it would be like if someone was making Sherlock Holmes movies for like 50 years, but they couldn't use Moriarty. Right. They're just like, motherfuckers, and they finally get Moriarty. And it's like, we're just going to throw him all over the fucking movie. I don't even care.
Yeah.
God damn it.
So it looks good. And I mean, and I like the build of the trailer. Like, I like that this is a nice, kind of quiet trailer that's about menace and atmosphere, and ends with Christoph Waltz welcoming James Bond to what looks like an Eyes Wide Shut style orgy.
Yeah, or like, it reminds me of the recent Batman comics with the Court of Owls, just like secret people doing secret things behind the scenes that it's the Illuminati, and they're really controlling everything.
Yeah.
And maybe they're trying to summon like some sort of Cthulhuoid ancient monstrosity or something. That's where my mind goes.
And, I hope, my only worry about Spectre so far is I hope the story isn't heading in the direction where Bond is suddenly the most important person in this world and all the mythology ties back to him, because James Bond is not that person. He is a hired gun with kind of no soul who's, searching for a soul in some sense. And it's more interesting to me if he's going up against villains who have no relation to him. But I think they could play that line, If they don't cross too far into it where, like, James Bond founded Spectre or something.
Yeah, it's like he's the chosen one or something.
Yeah. But if he just has some things in his past, I'm okay with that, because they have been hinting at that for...
And I mean, I'm sure, I don't know, watching the trailer, it seems pretty clear that the plot's probably going to be that, like, it's not going to be totally upfront about what James Bond is doing, but really he's just infiltrating them, and it's really his mission the whole time to do so, and that, like, he's kind of pulled between two sides, but really he's going to be on the good guy's side because he's James Bond.
But there's so much exciting stuff to be excited about with this movie, which is, more of that creative team, but also we're going to get to see the people they introduced in Skyfall kind of settling into their roles. We'll have the new Q, we will have the new M, played by Ralph Fiennes, which really seen as we saw him at the very end of Skyfall in that role, but not further than that. The new Moneypenny, who we see a little bit in this movie.
I hope they start off the movie with just as awkward a interaction between James Bond and Moneypenny as they left off the last movie.
Have I mentioned this nefarious organization I'm going after is called Spectre?
Yeah, it's like God.
No, but it looks great. Skyfall was one of my top 10 films of 2012, the year that came out. My favorite, big blockbuster that year. I assume Spectre is going to be kind of my most anticipated and stuff this year too. As much as I am excited for stuff like Furious 7, Spectre, I like a good James Bond movie, and I think they've got their shit together at this point, which is nice. They got past whatever the fuck was going on in the Pierce Brosnan era, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and then knowing that it's most of the same people behind Skyfall, that just makes, because they're so, Skyfall's not just a really good James Bond movie, it's just, a really refreshing action movie, and a lot of, the ways it takes its story and stuff, and the way it's shot and things like that. That it just makes me excited to get another movie in that style, because
absolutely
it felt very different when it came out.
It's an adult action movie,
yeah, exactly, yeah,
and we don't get a lot of those. Mm-hmm. So, and that's what James Bond is at its best, unless you're talking about The Spy Who Loved Me, which is James Bond for kids, but also a great movie. But that's pretty rare because the flip side of that equation is Moonraker or The Man with the Golden Gun or something.
That's how Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla is paradoxically the best Godzilla movie, even though it comes at the very end of the era of the worst kid-friendly Godzilla movies there are.
Yeah. By the way,
it's a trend in cinema.
We have to talk about Godzilla for a second.
Okay. We're going off the outline.
Have you heard who's directing the new Godzilla movie in Japan?
No.
It is Hideaki Anno. He is writing and directing it. If you don't know who he is, he's a famous Japanese animator who created and directed Neon Genesis Evangelion.
What?
And he is kind of a genius.
Kind of a maniac.
Kind of a maniac, and I love the idea of them giving him the reins to Godzilla.
Fuck, man. So the last Godzilla movie, the last Japanese one that came out in 2004, Godzilla Final Wars, that's a crazy fucking Godzilla movie.
Yeah.
The only person in the world who could make a crazier Godzilla movie is probably him.
Yeah.
Or Hideo Kojima, he has nothing else to do, so maybe they'll throw him Godzilla next time too.
I guess we need to talk about that in a little bit, but yeah. No, you're right. And I'm interested, I'll be interested to see what this means for, he's been making this new Neon Genesis film series.
Yeah.
Kind of the remakes, that there's the fourth and final one that's, I'm trying to figure out if it's supposed to come out. All of these have taken a while to make. He's kind of a perfectionist at that, and there's still not any real news on that. The last one came out in 2012, so I wonder if this is putting that on hold, or he'll just move over to Godzilla when he's done to that.
Or maybe that is just his Godzilla movie somehow. Crossover. Evangelion is all mechas and giant monsters and shit.
Yeah.
Godzilla will just drop right into it.
But that just seems like a really kind of inspired, interesting choice to me, because you don't usually get hugely notable filmmakers to make Godzilla movies.
Yeah.
And he would be a pretty notable guy in Japan. Mm-hmm. So, who most recently voiced the lead role in Hayao Miyazaki's The Wind Rises. Right. He has an eclectic career.
Yeah. That's fucking... I have not heard that. That's fucking weird.
Yeah. All right.
What the fuck were we talking about?
We were talking about Spectre.
Right.
So, thumbs up on that trailer. Excited to see it. And again, Christoph Waltz is in this movie. That is awesome.
Yeah.
He might be playing Blofeld. That is really cool.
And also, just to reiterate, talking about it as a trailer, it's a really good trailer because it doesn't give almost anything. It gives the kind of the premise of the movie vaguely away, and that's it. You don't get the thing that most trailers get nowadays, where it's just oh, I feel like I saw the whole fucking movie.
Right. Yeah. I think they've done a pretty good job with the Avengers trailers so far of not showing me all of Age of Ultron, but they're getting to that line where I don't need to see any more. Yeah. Anyway, other trailer I did want to mention, they just released the trailer 2 last week for Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. Did you see that?
I haven't watched it, no.
Okay. Pause really quick. It's a 1-minute trailer.
Okay.
Alright, main reason I wanted to show you that, Sean.
Okay, yes.
Is because the stunt at the end is fucking cool.
Yes,
Tom Cruise, and he was actually doing that hanging from a plane. In the fourth movie, he climbed the world's tallest building. And in the second movie, he was freebasing a giant fucking mountain. So,
do you think Tom Cruise just does these movies when he's just bored and is I want to risk my life in a really stupid way?
I think that's probably it. Yeah.
And then he just gives a director a call. It's let's fucking do this.
Yeah, so the Mission Impossible Rogue Nation trailer, I like it. I think it's a good... as you said, it's kind of got everything of modern trailers.
Yeah, because we were watching it and I commented that if people haven't noticed, trailers go through phases, specifically with the music and editing style of trailers. You go through different eras, and for the longest time, we were in the blah era. We just had the Inception blah noise, and that just every single trailer did that ad nauseum. And then over the past year or so, it's in video games and in movies. there's been a new trend to replace that with the soulful, solemn, melancholic pop song like cover that like kind of mixes in with a little bit more of an instrumental track. But what's interesting about the Mission Impossible trailer is that it does that, and then it starts putting bloms on top of the soulful, melancholic pop song remix.
What else could you want?
I don't know. I think it's pretty much perfect.
Okay.
Although I miss the days of the bygone era of when I was a child, and every trailer had like trailer voice guys doing like, in a world where Tom Cruise is hanging off of a plane because he has nothing better to do.
Have you seen the movie from last year called In a World?
No, I've heard about it.
It's really, you would like it if you like the trailer voice thing. I mean, it's a really nice, sweet comedy. Either way, but yeah, it does that and does it well. Anyway,
One day we'll get trailer voice guys coming back to do trailer voices. But
so, what Mission Impossible movies have you seen?
3. That's it.
You've seen 3. Okay, and 3's great because it's got Philip Seymour Hoffman playing one of the best action movie villains ever.
Yes.
Yeah, I like the Mission Impossible series. It is a weird fucking series because the first movie is okay, not great. The second movie is abysmal. And then they ignored that and made the third movie, which is a really good action movie.
Yes.
And then the fourth movie, which is a really good action movie. And if you like the third, you should see the fourth. It's got, I would say the story is weaker, but the action is better, so it kind of evens out. Mm-hmm. It's got a kind of a weak ending, but there's a lot of great stuff in it. And then this fifth one, which is going to be written and directed by Chris McQuarrie, who has worked on the series before and did Jack Reacher with Tom Cruise, which I've heard is a good movie, and I've never seen it. It's on Netflix, so maybe I'll catch it sometime. So it looks good, and I like this series. It reliably gives kind of just some fun Tom Cruise action. And as weird as Tom Cruise is in real life, and he's in the headlines right now because of that Scientology documentary, which reveals he's been hurting people systematically. I like him in action movies. And I like that literally...
Where he hurts people systematically, but for your enjoyment on camera.
True.
Hurts and kills.
Yes. And I like that like the first scene of this trailer is him running full out.
Yeah.
Because that's what Tom Cruise does in these movies.
And then Alec Baldwin pops up and you're like, I can't watch him in anything ever since 30 Rock because now it just looks weird. Because I feel like everything because his character in 30 Rock is supposed to be very serious. That's what makes him funny. So it's like when he plays a serious role, I just think he's trying to be funny. And it's ruined every performance for him since.
That's funny. I still haven't watched 30 Rock. I know I need to. So Alec Baldwin hasn't been ruined for me yet, but I look forward to seeing 30 Rock someday.
It's a really weird phenomenon. Yeah. You just see him and everything. It's like, are you just playing a serious role, or are you playing it serious and trying to do that in a funny way? I can't tell anymore.
Yeah. All right, well, let's go ahead and move on. That's enough movie trailer stuff. We'll talk really quickly about some TV things. And there are plenty of little TV things I would like to talk about at some point. I think maybe next week or the week after when a couple of shows have finished up. Like, I would like to talk a little bit about my thoughts on Better Call Saul, which is the Breaking Bad spinoff. And as of last night's episode, a show I officially like better than Breaking Bad. I think it has surpassed that series for me. Anyway, so I would like to talk about that, but maybe I'll give my thoughts when the season is over. But in terms of other TV stuff, one of my favorite shows I watch most every day is The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. Obviously, been around for like 17 years now, big part of American culture. And, a couple months ago, he did announce that he was going to leave The Daily Show, which is sad. All things come to an end, of course. It is a bit of a blow losing Colbert and Stewart within a year of each other.
But, I don't know, that kind of feels, natural to me, that...
Out with the old and with the new.
Yeah, they had been running alongside each other for so long, and the show's, obviously, interconnected in so many ways that it almost would feel weird having one without the other at some point.
And I will say, I thought Stewart for the last year or so felt like his heart wasn't fully in it. He still did good stuff, and his contributors did good stuff, but his jokes were just kind of a little flat, and he was spending too much time kind of mugging for the camera and breaking script. And I will say, after he made this announcement, the show has snapped back into place. I feel like he's been reinvigorated knowing the end is coming, which often happens, and it's been really good lately, but that's going to end. I know you don't watch The Daily Show frequently, but...
No, I only kind of pop it up when I suddenly have lots more free time on a day-to-day basis, or when something political interesting is happening. But
but you like the show,
right?
right?
Yeah, definitely. It's a phenomenally well-written show that's it's kind of cliche to say at some point, but it's a better source of news than actual news shows at some point.
No, it is, and it's always kept that up. It's it's been good lately. I will miss it a lot when it's gone. That's to me an even tougher blow than Colbert, because Colbert was really funny and insightful, but it couldn't last forever, you know?
Yeah, the satirical approach has a time limit on it.
Whereas it's going to be, because I do watch The Daily Show, not every day, sometimes I let episodes stack up, but I try to see it all because I like the routine of just having those 20 minutes 4 times a week, because when you do read about the news in the world, that's one of those things that helps keep you sane.
Yeah.
Because American politics are fucking ridiculous, and Jon Stewart knows how to talk about it. And so, I'm going to miss that. What does, I think, rectify it a little bit for me is that John Oliver left the show, a year or two ago, and started his show on HBO Last Week Tonight, which frankly blows anything The Daily Show has ever done out of the water. And I don't say that to demean The Daily Show, just to say John Oliver having 30 minutes a week, only having to do it once a week, having no ads, no content restrictions. The stuff he does on a week-to-week basis on Last Week Tonight is like The Daily Show on steroids. He took kind of the raw promise of that show and just made it better. Kind of like I've heard people who, like, I've never watched Saturday Night Live because I wasn't born in the 1970s.
Saturday Night Live.
But people who
watch real comedy.
People who were born, a longer time ago than me, would say that, The Daily Show supplanted the Weekend Update segment of Saturday Night Live, which did a similar thing, and then The Daily Show showed you could do it better by giving it its own show. And I think Last Week Tonight has done that for The Daily Show, so having Last Week Tonight around will help that, because what John Oliver does on that show is just kind of transcendental. It's really amazing, and if you haven't seen it yet, they put up the majority of every episode on YouTube, so there's no excuse not to check out some of those segments. He did one a couple weeks ago. If you have to check out a recent one, check out the one he did on NCAA and March Madness, and the abuses that system takes on college athletes. It is hilarious and sad.
Yeah.
And he did one last week that was mostly just sad about ticketing in the United States and the way we municipalities basically get their money by manipulating the weakest and poorest among us. So,
that's the way any good society runs itself, in my opinion.
Right. Well, you might be a Republican.
It's humanity, man. You can't fight. It's the fucking natural reality of what happens when humans create societies and complex social structures together. You can't escape it. You can't escape human nature. All you can do is make stupid podcasts.
Yes, and shows like Daily Show and Last Week Tonight, which are great because they help us stay sane throughout this. But anyway, so Jon Stewart's leaving. That's sad to me primarily because it means we're not going to have him for the next presidential election. This is going to be a rough one.
Yeah.
Oh well. Anyway, but they did announce his replacement, and that is going to be, surprisingly to pretty much everyone, I think, is Trevor Noah, who is a South African comedian, very famous in South Africa, his home country, and lesser known here, but he has been on The Daily Show 3 times. I've seen all of his segments. I thought his first one was kind of funny, and then the other 2, not so much. But, that's 3 5-minute segments. I wouldn't...
that doesn't really say anything about what he could do as a host.
No, and I assume they looked at it and thought he was the best guy, and I'm interested to see what his show will be. There's been the whole controversy over he had some bad jokes on his Twitter feed that people said were racist
Have you seen the Patton Oswalt response?
That's what I wanted to talk about, because the Patton Oswalt response makes me think Patton Oswalt should take over The Daily Show. It's epic.
Yeah, just look it up online, listeners of the podcast.
He did 54 tweets in a row, basically a Twitter essay on why you shouldn't judge someone for their Twitter jokes.
Yeah, and how, you can take any joke and deconstruct it into, things that could potentially be offensive. And what's really funny about how Patton Oswalt does it is that he seriously, he can deconstruct, every single piece of the joke, individual words, down into, the most component pieces of what someone hypothetically could maybe in some crazy way find offensive, and he does it so well. I feel like I've seen people in areas of the internet basically do what he did in that joke, only seriously for other things.
Totally. No,
it's really good.
Patton Oswalt is awesome. And
he's a great comedian.
Yeah, he probably doesn't ever want to do a show like The Daily Show because he's more of an actor and comedian than anything else, but he would be great at something like that, I feel like. Anyway, there's been that controversy, which led us to the Patton Oswalt thing, which was great. But
internet controversy,
I'm not hugely excited about the next era for The Daily Show. I'm interested to see, maybe this Trevor Noah guy will do a really great job. The only thing that makes me a little bummed out is I was kind of hoping someone from the current roster of correspondents would get the job, so it more feels like the Daily Show we've been watching. Because, he's basically a new guy to the show. I assume it's going to be a new show, basically, and that's fine. But,
Just think of it like Doctor Who. Just Jon Stewart got hit with a lethal dose of radiation.
As he's wont to do.
Yeah, and then he regenerates into some handsome young South African man.
It could be really good, and it's interesting. It does feel like the end of an era, because basically all of the long-running correspondents are leaving the show. Jason Jones just left. Samantha Bee's about to leave. They're both going to TBS. I was kind of hoping Samantha Bee would get the show. She's been there the longest, and she's really funny. She's getting her own show at TBS, though, that I guess is similar to this, and maybe that'll be really good. So that's always good. But yeah, it's interesting. The keys to that kingdom are not going to anyone who's really been there before, and that's an interesting choice, and maybe that's what needs to happen, is you need to try not to recreate Jon Stewart, but go in a different direction.
Or they could sneak into Jon Stewart's dressing room, take some hair from his comb, and try to recreate Jon Stewart as a clone, and then just keep the show going on indefinitely as it is. There's always that option.
Yeah. It does mean
There's always that option.
It does mean that Comedy Central is both the only network on all of television to have any late-night hosts who are not white. And they're going to have two of them now, with Trevor Noah and Larry Wilmore, who's the nightly show, I should say, has been really good. I think it's still finding its legs, but it is a good substitute for the Colbert Report, and it's a good show in its own right. But that just makes you kind of sad about the state of diversity in television when you think about that for a second. Anyway, so that's all interesting stuff. Let's go ahead and move on. All right, so Sean.
Yes.
PlayStation 4.
Yes.
You like it?
I have played a lot of it over the past week because Bloodborne is exclusive to the PS4.
PS4 basically had its biggest system update since its launch this week. And you've played a lot of Bloodborne, so that's good testing for it.
Yeah.
All sorts of new features. We don't need to go through all of them, but what have you used? What's notable to you? How does it work?
I mean, the big one is the suspend resume. All the other stuff is, there's just there's some interesting stuff, like we talked about it on the last podcast, but I think it's worth mentioning again that they put in a whole suite of features to sort of accommodate disabled gamers in a number of different ways.
And kudos to them for that.
Yeah, you can reassign buttons to other buttons, or multiple buttons to the same button and stuff. So that would allow someone who maybe does not have full mobility of their hands to be able to play video games that they otherwise would not be able to. And then there's just stuff with being able to customize fonts in different ways if you're vision impaired and that kind of stuff. So there's a very broad selection of features, more than I've ever seen for any other game console, sort of keeping that stuff in mind. And I think that's really important, and is something that should be lauded and mentioned, because everyone should be looking to incorporating that stuff where possible.
And with the PS4 being the industry leader right now, that's good that they're taking that initiative.
Yeah, it's a really encouraging step. It's because it's always something that having someone who doesn't have really any of those issues, you really take it for granted. And then every once in a while you encounter a game that does include something as simple as a colorblind mode, and then you remember that it's a huge portion of particularly the male population has various forms of colorblindness, and can make certain games almost impossible to play. It's a really important thing, I think, that sort of put that into games. And then if you can put it on the system level, that's obviously all the better. But other than that, there's just a couple of things they sort of put in and sort of moved some stuff around, added in some other options. But the main thing is suspend resume, was they talked about when the PS4 launched, or in the PS4 announcement, and then they basically later rolled back and said that feature's not going to be in at launch. Obviously, the Xbox One had it at launch. And maybe they didn't have it at launch, but they incorporated it soon after. I don't quite remember.
I think it was there at launch, but I don't think all games supported it. Might have been the thing.
I think it was maybe in a beta state early on for the Xbox One.
By now, that is one of the kind of defining features of the system.
So basically, for those who don't know, the suspend resume is more or less if you have an iPhone or a Vita or something like that. It's more or less the idea of that you put it into this extreme low power state, but while it's in that low power state, it's still keeping whatever application you had running sort of technically stored in the RAM, and so it's ready that as soon as you wake it up from that state, whatever you were doing is ready to go immediately from where you left off. And so it came out basically the middle of spring break, and I've played my PS4 every single day since then, and I immediately turned on the suspend resume feature to see if it would work. And so far, having turned it on every single day using that feature, it's never come up and been you can't actually run this. A couple of times when I would have like Netflix or something as like a suspended app in the background, it would like have a little bit of troubles with buffering, and I would have to close out of Netflix and bring it back up. But that's not like the main thing you're using it for, is to bring up games, because some video games, like Bloodborne, have really long loading screens.
Yeah.
And can take like 3 minutes to get in from a cold boot into the game. So with the suspend resume in PS4, you basically just turn it on. It brings you to the sign up screen. So you sign into your user. So I just sign into me. And then it will bring you immediately into whatever the screen was on that you were last on. So if I was playing Bloodborne and I was just in like the hub area, it would immediately load, like bring me just into that screen completely seamlessly. And then it loads in like a bar at the top for like 5 or 10 seconds that has like just like notifications and stuff on it. So like if you want to just get into the game without having to go in and look at if you had any messages or something, that pops in to like tell you if like, hey, this update for another game downloaded in the background like while it was asleep. So that's it works completely seamlessly. It's not a feature that like it's useful. I don't care about it that much. I know a lot of people like really are really into it, and it's not a big deal for me. But it is definitely, it's just a nice convenience thing. Particularly with Bloodborne. It was nice to have that come out with Bloodborne, because the loading, like every single review of Bloodborne, if people have been reading them, everyone mentions how long the loading screens are. That is no bullshit.
Yeah.
They are, especially if you're loading into a main area, it's like a minute load screen. It's crazy. So, not having to do that every time you boot up the game is very nice. It's very convenient.
No, I like it. I agree with you. This is not the kind of feature that changes everything. Yeah. But it's really nice. And I think I've gotten used to that convenience with the Vita and with the 3DS. Both of those, that's just how I play games on those. Yeah. I don't worry about, I need to get us to a stopping point. I just, okay, close my system. I'm done. And on the Xbox One, it doesn't work for every game, because in some it wouldn't make sense for it to be in there. Yeah. Like the Halo Master Chief Collection, it doesn't really work with, which makes total sense. Although you can go right to the menu with it, which is nice.
Yeah. I should note that like it does pop up when you like turn on the suspend resume feature on the PS4. It does have a message that says this will not work with every game. I've only really played Bloodborne with it, so I haven't seen, but I haven't heard of what games don't use it.
The big one right now is Destiny is going to add it in their next patch, but it doesn't support it right now. And
that kind of makes sense.
It does,
always connected to a server.
Right, so in any case, yeah. And I like it on the Xbox One. Like I recently played Sleeping Dogs, which we talked about, and that was really nice to have Suspend Resume on, because that has long, just to get loaded into the world.
Yeah, because it has that first long load.
So sometimes I would just turn on my Xbox One and not know what I wanted to play, and then it would be right there. I'm like, oh, I was just finished beating someone to death. Let's do it again, you know?
Just load back in mid-combo.
I have done that. It's great. So, or mid-car crash or something like that. Yeah. So, it's a nice feature, and I hope the kinks get worked out, because there are some little kinks to it on the Xbox One, and with the PS4, it's still in progress. As you say, not all games support it and stuff.
Yeah.
But, I think the more we get to using that, that's just a nice feature that makes me feel like we're in a more modern era of gaming.
Yeah.
On a technical side, not a artistic side.
Just a nice little convenience.
All right, let's flip over and talk about the Xbox One for a little bit. Halo 5 had a big week. They announced their big ARG game that I have not been paying attention to because it's not worth my time. Yeah. And, There's literally
That's so 2004, man.
Yeah, there's really no series. Maybe Persona I would follow an ARG for, but even then you're pushing it.
And it'd have to be a very captivating ARG.
Yeah. And I love Halo. That's not the point. But yeah, the ARG I don't care about. But they did release 2 trailers the other day. One from Agent Locke's perspective, one from the Master Chief's perspective, that at the end announced the Halo 5 Guardians release date as October 27th, a little later in the year than Halo games usually come out.
Because it's traditionally September. Yeah. It's September or November.
Right. So that's fine. October, that's good. I hope the game will be ready in time, because the Master Chief Collection is still fucking broken. Yeah. That was all a refund. Anyway, it's okay. I've enjoyed the Master Chief Collection.
They gave you ODST.
Not yet, but we're getting there.
They'll probably give you ODST, and hopefully it'll work.
Hey, I'm excited. The day they give us ODST, I will clear my schedule if I can and play that, because it's a great game.
Yeah.
Anyway, so, Halo 5. We got the release date, pretty much what we expected, sometime in that zone.
Yeah.
It'll be their big thing this year, and with no real competition from the PS4 that season. They've not announced, because with Uncharted pushed back, I don't know what their big system seller that season will be.
Yeah, and there's definitely no obviously E3 is going to happen, so there might be something announced there. But I can't think of anything.
Uncharted 3.5. No, there will be an Uncharted remastered collection though, because there is of everything.
Yeah, it will happen.
There's the God of War 3 remastered coming out.
Though, to be fair, with God of War 3, having recently played through that whole series, God of War 3 is the only one of the three main God of War games that is not at 60 frames per second. So that is actually kind of nice, the idea of hey, it was stupid that we cut back on that for God of War 3 because that combat feels way better at 60 frames per second. So assuming that they force the remastered version to run at 60 frames per second,
it is.
Which is that's I as a person who's just recently played all those games, I kind of understand why you'd want a remastered version of that one in particular.
Yeah, no, it's okay. But what from the PS3 at a certain point is going to be left unremastered? I don't know. Final Fantasy 13.
Let's not talk about Final Fantasy 13.
Anyway,
just release all the Final Fantasy Nova Fabula Crystallis fucking saga.
Yeah,
finally in Super HD.
And look, I'm not making fun of the PS4 for this. Xbox is doing it just as much.
Everyone's doing it,
Xbox's big system seller last year was the Master Chief Collection, and it was also broken. So, there you go. But anyway,
everyone's sort of twiddling their thumbs, just pumping out everything. They just recently announced that, the Batman games will have fucking remastered editions.
This generation has been off to the most slow, lurching, halting start. It's weird.
Until you fucking play Bloodborne.
Okay, good point.
Motherfucker, that fucking game. Jesus.
We'll get there. We're almost there. Don't worry. Let's see. So Halo 5, what did you think of these two little trailers?
I didn't know that there was two of them at first, and so I watched the first one, which was the one from Agent Locke's perspective.
That's the one I saw first, too.
That's kind of a cool trailer, because I'm just going to spoil it. But what it basically does is that it's Agent Locke, and because he's the new character to the franchise, and he's just kind of walking in some destroyed city narrating to himself, and then you see a big statue of the Master Chief, and he's like, "Man, Master Chief, you motherfucker," basically. And then the camera pans down, and you see the Chief at the base of the statue, and he's all fucked up, and he's like, "Master Chief, you motherfucker." And
not literally, but
but that's
that's the sentiment.
Yeah. And I was like, that's a kind of an interesting trailer, because you don't know what has really happened. And I thought, it's a really good camera pan from, this very iconic statue of the Chief that looks like it's, pulled from, a Halo 3 action figure or something, to panning down to him, wounded on the ground. And it's a nice sort of, for a fan of the franchise, it's a nice, impactful image that sort of, brings a significant tone to the trailer. And then you watch the other trailer, and it's the exact same trailer, only the characters are flipped. So it's it's not a statue of Locke. It's still a statue of Master Chief, but it's Locke at the bottom, and Master Chief's like, "Locke, you motherfucker." And the scene of the trailer, it's just what? That's because I would have been really, thought it would be really stupid if I had seen the Master Chief one first, with Locke wounded, because it's who gives a shit? Who is this guy? It's only a good trailer from the Locke perspective. And then it's the Master Chief perspective. It's this is a shitty trailer. And,
I completely agree, because the Master Chief one, just nothing about it makes sense. It's all out of context. It's just nothing about it is all that gripping, because
you don't know who Agent Locke is as a character, so there's no connection made there when they try to bring him down.
It's also out of step with the rest of the marketing for this game, so that's why the Agent Locke version of the trailer is interesting, and the previous ads have been kind of interesting. They're all from the Locke perspective of the Chief has done something bad, he's going after him, and he no longer trusts the Chief.
Yeah.
And that creates an interesting mystery, because we know the Chief is a good guy, but we also don't know what's happened since Halo 4, and that allows us to also see this stuff through Locke's eyes and make him an interesting possible new character. It's weird. I do think all of the Halo 5 advertisements, frankly, have been too much of a cock tease.
It's just a weird... I feel basically, it's just a weird thing where it's I feel the kind of step in an interesting direction with sort of how they're pushing the game and the marketing, and then all of a sudden they undercut it in some weird way, and you're I don't know.
Because if you were to look at the weird amalgam of trailers they've put out there so far, you would think Halo 5 is going to be this weird experimental first-person shooter.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be. I think maybe it'll be a two-perspective campaign where you play as both of them, which could be interesting if they do it right and not Halo 2 style. But
what if this is like a nightmare scenario. What if the whole game is just like you play through it as Master Chief and you play through it as Locke, but it's like those trailers. That it's like the exact same levels, the exact same situations. It's like playing through Sonic the Hedgehog 2 as Tails.
Say, yeah. Or Sonic Adventure 2, like where you have the hero side and the dark side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at least those had like unique levels. I'm saying like literally the exact same game with like swappable protagonists. I don't think that's what it's going to be, but like what if the philosophy of those two trailers was actually like 343 Industries like dropping you a hint of like this is going to be the stupidest idea for a campaign since forever.
Yeah. I doubt it'll be that, and I think whatever they do will be interesting. I trust 343 at this point. I think the Halo 4 campaign was really good, and they've shown they're smart at that stuff.
Like obviously, like E3 is going to win because they haven't shown, to my knowledge,
any gameplay footage
from the campaign. So E3
and that makes me think it is going to be different. Like, and I would be okay with that if it's a back and forth or something where you've got Locke's perspective and the Chief's perspective, or you go half of the game with Locke and then you learn what's going on. You know, if they want to shake it up, that could be interesting because the status quo was pretty heavily rocked at the end of Halo 4. Yeah. And, 343 basically has an unlimited vault of money to pour into this game.
Sure, yeah, because Microsoft is just like, we don't have any games! Nobody has any games! Make something!
Well, at Halo 4, also, they just had piles of money to throw into that. As you can tell, it's probably one of the most graphically and sonically advanced games ever made. Yeah. And I assume they're only going to step that up for this one. So, I hope their ambition doesn't get the better of them. Yeah. Is all I'll say.
I hope like it's not like Halo 2 where like all the Master Chief levels are either really awesome or pretty good, and then all like the Locke levels are, god damn it, these fucking suck.
Yeah, and remember, they did want this game out last year, and luckily they gave them this extra year to polish it, and I think hopefully that'll be enough. I imagine it will be. They've had at least 3 years to work on this game, and when Halo games have had 3 full years, generally they've been okay. Yeah. Halo 2 had 3, I guess, but that was also there were other extenuating circumstances. There's like inventing a new online network. Yeah. And stuff like that. So anyway, and you can replay Halo 2 in all its just terrible glory in the Master Chief Collection. Yeah. That game is not as good as you remember it being.
I've played through Halo 2 multiple times, and that is always how I feel every time I play that campaign. It's like, god damn it, the first 3 levels are really fucking good.
And then the rest of it is terrible.
It's just like some of Delta Halo I'm pretty into, and then then it's like, fucking this. Then you go to the Sentinel Factory and you're like, I played this game literally 3 times. How am I surprised every time I get to this level? And I'm like, I totally forgot this like 2 to 3 level sequence was in this game. Because I only remember like 2/3 of Halo 2 for some reason.
Yeah, it's the Halo 2 multiplayer, still great. Yeah. Not so much on the campaign side. But we're going to get at least one comment saying we're wrong on this. I just know that.
I have played enough Halo 2 that I feel justified in saying that I'm right, even if it is a subjective thing.
Yeah. Speaking of video games and video game delays, last week, Eiji Aonuma from Nintendo, who's the producer and oftentimes director of the Legend of Zelda series, going back to Majora's Mask, made a video that kind of looked like, I don't know, you're apologizing to your girlfriend or something, where he's just talking to the camera on Facebook. Announcing that he very solemnly, they have to delay The Legend of Zelda. It will not be making its not even really confirmed 2015 release date.
I mean, they had said 2015. Right. But, it was something that I'd never expected it to come out in 2015.
Because this is a really ambitious game they're making. Yeah. And, I did not know there was some actual gameplay footage of it out there, and there is, and I saw it. And it's amazing what they're trying with this game, I think, compared to what other Zelda games have been recently. So it makes his explanation made total sense. It's like, we want to make the full game. We could release it this year, but it wouldn't be the game we want. And this could be a really cool game, and I look forward to taking a look at it when it actually comes out. But as I said on Twitter the day this happened, if anybody expressed any surprise about this at all, they were lying and being disingenuous, because this is what happens to Zelda games. They get delayed.
And like, even if it wasn't Zelda, like, I don't know, if you're someone who has followed video games for any amount of time, like, you can tell just from, like, the marketing when that game's not going to come out in 2015. Are you kidding me? It's a tentpole franchise, and we've barely seen any. Like, we've seen, like, like a announcement trailer and then a like 10-minute video where most of it is like shot off screen anyways, and like their like main gameplay showpiece. Yeah, so it's like we have not seen anywhere near enough of that game to like make you think that it was going to actually come out in this year when we're like this far in.
It's not ready for the big time yet, and that's okay. Games take time, and that's good. And and honestly, the impressive thing about Nintendo right now is they've kind of beefed up their slate for the Wii U enough that they can survive this year without that.
Sure.
I think they have enough other stuff. I think they can make it to 2016, and if they can keep that growth, that could help them when it finally comes out. But it will be, I mean, it is interesting. They have not had a Zelda game on this, a new Zelda game on this system until like 4 years into its lifespan.
Yeah.
Will be the thing. So... But that happens.
Zelda games usually come, particularly the 3D titles, are pretty sparse. Kind of like the Mario games.
Right.
Like the main line games are pretty sparse. Like they've kind of done all the weird crossover, spin-off stuff. But.
Like I didn't even remember this. Ocarina of Time was about halfway through the N64's lifespan.
And then like a year later they came out with Majora's Mask. And you're like, why are all the character models the same? Because they made that game a year after Ocarina of Time.
Right. Well, yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, this always happens. Twilight Princess got delayed a full 2 years, I think, because they had the first delay of a year when it was a GameCube game. Then they announced the Wii, and they're like, we have to push it back another year so we can flip the graphics and low-res them for the Wii, and make it harder to control, all of that stuff. And
just make the biggest, ugliest ground texture of all time for the Hyrule Field in that game.
And I was looking into this, actually. Skyward Sword was never technically delayed. The internet did that thing it does, though, where it just assumed it was coming out at a certain point, and then they didn't put it out then. It's like, it was delayed. It's like, no, they never... The only date they ever gave was the date it came out on. So, that kind of stuff happens, too.
But it's like, it's usually, like, one of the things is that even if they don't say a date... And for this, like, they just vaguely gave the year 2015 in a video. But, like, even if they don't, like, vaguely say that, they tend to announce Zelda games super far in advance. Like, Twilight Princess, they announced way ahead in advance. Right. It's like a weird tease in an E3 press conference. And so, the thing about The Legend of Zelda is that it takes a long time to make the games, and Nintendo just has a habit of announcing them way ahead in advance, a lot more than usually most games are, so...
Yeah. And hey, I'm looking forward to this. I think the Wii U and the power of the hardware really could be something that reinvigorates the series for a lot of people. And not that the recent games have been poorly received or anything, but I think there are fans like you, Sean, who have just felt a general lack of enthusiasm.
Yes. I don't know. Yeah. Twilight Princess. Man. Twilight Princess.
Yeah, you were not a fan of that
fucking game.
Yeah. Maybe one day we'll have my brother Thomas on here so you and him can debate Twilight Princess.
He's just wrong. He's just an idiot.
Well, that's mean, but I haven't played it, so...
Twilight Princess is just this game that, like, so desperately wishes it was Ocarina of Time, and the whole time you're playing, it's just like, dude, stop! Just let it go! Just be your own game! Ocarina of Time came out in fucking 96. It was 10 years before fucking Ocarina of... Or I guess it was 98, but it was almost 10 years before Twilight Princess came out, was Ocarina of Time. It's like, fucking be something else.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I can kind of even sense that. I've never finished a Zelda game, but like when I try to play Ocarina of Time, I get into it pretty fast. It's a game that kind of hooks you and is fun.
God,
Twilight Princess does not...
takes hours!
When does it get started? I've tried starting it so many times.
Like, I could be, like, literally halfway through Ocarina of Time in the time it takes me to, like, get out of the wolf transformation into normal Link in Twilight Princess. Like, literally. It takes fucking hours and hours for that game to, like, open up.
I don't think I've even gotten out of the fucking town you started. Because you have to go herd sheep for, like, hours.
You herd sheep, you have to go fish. It takes fucking forever. It's, for a game that has no voice acting, it has, like, the most story, like, shoved into the beginning of a game I've ever seen. It's like Assassin's Creed 3 on fucking steroids for how long it takes that game to get off the ground.
Yeah.
Fuck Twilight Princess. God damn that game. I have tried to beat that game 3 times, and I can't do it. I cannot get all the way through that mammoth fucking slog of a game.
Yeah. All right. Well, and that's the thing. A lot of other Zelda games have these nice kind of quick starts. Like Wind Waker gets you out on the seas pretty fast, and Link to the Past and Link Between Worlds, you just start playing, which is great.
Ocarina of Time, as long as you know where to, like, how to get the shield and the sword, which is pretty easy, you can get into the first dungeon in, like, 5 minutes, you know?
Yeah. As speedrunners have taught us.
Yes.
You can get to Ganondorf in 5 minutes if you want.
Like weird backflip through like a gap in a wall. Yeah.
All right. In bigger Nintendo news, Nintendo tonight, we're recording this on Wednesday night. It will not come out until Thursday, but we'll see on that. Anyway, let's see. So Nintendo held a Nintendo Direct press conference, their first one in a little while, and they announced some stuff. So let's talk about some of these things.
Okay.
Some interesting things. They had already told us that Mewtwo would be coming to Smash Bros. For Wii U and 3DS as kind of a reward to people who bought both titles. You get a free download of Mewtwo. It'll also be paid DLC, and they have finally announced it will be coming April 28th. I like Mewtwo. He was one of my... I like that fighter back from Melee.
Yeah,
and,
I liked playing him a lot in Melee.
And I fucking love Smash Bros. For Wii U and 3DS. It is just one of my favorite games in recent years, and I still play it all the time. So I'm excited to have more fighters. I think the price for the DLC is a little steep. It's $3.99 for one platform or $4.99 for both. Kind of a combo download code, which they're doing more of now. Yeah. They're trying to get into that. Haltingly, but they're trying.
Yeah, that seems like that would like pricing one character feels really awkward. Like it would be better for like that price for like two characters or something.
Or if it was the character and a new stage.
Yeah. If there was like a little something extra, because like pricing any lower just feels kind of like you might as well just make him free at some point, you know?
Yeah, who knows? But anyway, in tandem with this, they are also going to be releasing this summer in June Lucas to Smash Bros. For 3DS and Wii U. He is another Earthbound character. And, you know, my brother and I have always hated Ness and Lucas in these games because they're just kind of annoying.
Ness. I like that. Because Ness was like, he was the last character you unlocked in the original Smash Brothers, so I always feel like he's in a special position in terms of Smash Brothers for me. Of like, he was the last one you get, and then he had like that fucking like yo-yo move that was really cheap in the original one.
No, I agree. I mean, Ness is okay on his own. When they added Lucas, it just got kind of lame because then you'd have to fight them, and they were annoying. And I think if you played the Subspace Emissary, there's a whole really long stretch with Ness and Lucas, which is what made me hate him. My brother,
Lucas, Ness is kind of badass because he's got the yo-yo, he's got the bat. You know, Lucas is kind of a sad sack of shit, right?
Yeah.
Like he's just really pathetic. He's got a stupid like blonde like 50s do. Like, go fuck yourself.
Basically, my memory of Lucas, though, is in Brawl, which is where he's from. Well, he's from Earthbound, but in Smash Bros. Terms, he's from Brawl. Brawl had that stage create mode, and the most elaborate thing my little brother did in that stage create mode was he created an elaborate death trap that he would just send Ness and Lucas into, where it was spikes and flames, and they would be stuck in there for eternity, going up to like 99%. And he found that really funny. Yeah. And now that I say that, my brother might be a serial killer.
I mean, it's a trend for the Lack family, apparently, of just being complete psychotics when you play video games. Like, it's not surprising if you go back and like listen to us when we're playing fucking Red Dead Redemption 2 years after it came out.
Okay, I have to interrupt our current topic here. Okay. I have a Red Dead Redemption story about the bandolier. So, we were in. I'm in this Latin American cinema class. All right, we were watching this movie about the Mexican Revolution.
Okay,
and the teacher was in the front of the room, and he was kind of lost for words. He's like, "What's that thing Pancho Villa is wearing in the movie? It's got the bullets," and I just shouted out, "Bandolier! Bandolier!" I was so excited. I was like, "It's a bandolier! It's a bandolier!" And everyone kind of looked at me. I was like, "I learned that from Red Dead Redemption."
You learned that from me, motherfucker!
I know.
Because you never fucking bought it! And I learned that from Star Wars because that's what Chewbacca has for his crossbow.
But no, I just shouted that in the middle of class. Like, "It's a bandolier! It's a bandolier!" I was so excited. Alright, anyway, Lucas is coming. On the list of characters I'd love them to add into the Smash Bros. Roster, Lucas would be near the bottom, but, you know.
Yeah, and especially, like, in terms of bringing back a returning character.
Yeah.
Yeah, fuck Lucas.
I'm trying to think, what other returning characters would be nice to have? You know, I miss Roy being Marth's buddy.
Sure.
You know, if we want to do that, because that's how people learned about Fire Emblem with
Roy and Marth,
even though they've never shared a game together. They're from two different continuities and everything.
Yeah,
fuck it, Marth and Roy. I don't know. There's plenty of fun clones.
Yeah, like I don't even know well enough the roster for the new game to even remember what characters they have not brought back.
It's not.
They should bring back Solid Snake because that was really fucking stupid in Brawl, and he was an incredibly cheap character.
Yeah. Oh, we need to talk about Solid Snake in a minute, but we'll get to that. Let's see. Fucked up that outline. All right. Let's see what else we got. Nintendo is taking suggestions on new Super Smash Bros. Characters in an online ballot.
Just type Solid Snake into that.
That'll be really useful for them.
Yeah, yeah, they're going to get a lot of like really great. I think you should put Darth Vader. I think Captain America should be in the new Smash Brothers. I like Captain America. He's a cool dude.
All right, this is weird. Okay, I'm at the forum. They want to know your gender. I don't really get that.
It's very relevant to the character you're suggesting.
Fuck it. We'll do Roy, Fire Emblem.
No, put fucking Solid Snake in there.
Solid Snake? Okay.
Yeah. From fucking Metal Gear. And I want fucking Metal Gear 1 Solid Snake. I want it to be the top-down sprite from the original Metal Gear game.
Fucking original sprite from the top down view NES motherfucker. Is that
sure? Yeah.
Is that your sentiment basically?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a field to say why should this character become a fighter?
I think if you confirm and send that to Nintendo, they'll take it very seriously.
Okay. Good. All right. Okay, maybe I'll put that up with the episode because it's kind of funny. All right. So yeah, there's that. I've already seen at least one campaign to try to get Goku into Smash Bros.
Again, totally feasible, absolutely going to happen.
All right, they got some.
It would actually be really fucking cool if Goku was in Smash Brothers. I'd be really stoked about that.
Yeah. But anyway, let's see. We've got some new Amiibos coming out, including the Yoshi's Woolly World Amiibo, which that would be great if the Woolly Yoshi Amiibo is made out of actual wool.
Yeah, and it just falls apart.
If you touch it,
you put it on the stand, it just collapses into a pile of wool. It's like, oh.
Let's see, Mario Maker, which is a game I am really excited for. It looks like a really cool kind of powerful level creation editor. And it's coming out in September. It was originally supposed to come out this spring, but they delayed it a little bit. But I am excited. It'll have... I love the basic thing. One of the things I'm excited for is you can create your levels in the style of like original Mario Bros. Or New Super Mario Bros. Or Mario 3 or Mario World. So any of those aesthetics that you like.
They should just allow you to make American Super Mario Bros. 2 levels.
That would be cool.
It's a completely different fucking game.
Yeah. Let's see. They've got some new Amiibos coming out. What's...
Oh, great. What new Amiibos are coming from Nintendo?
There's at least one I know I want. Although...
Is there Solid Snake one?
No, because he's not on the roster anymore. But I know they're doing Zero Suit Samus, and I have regular Samus, so I gotta get Zero Suit Samus, right?
Well, of course, yeah. No, yeah. I mean, what kind of loser would you be if you didn't own both the Samus and the Zero Suit Samus figures?
You know, I have been trying to get the Toad Amiibo, and it's sold out everywhere, and I don't actually care that much.
Jonathan, what are you doing?
I don't actually care.
What are you doing with your life?
I haven't been, like, actively trying, but
You clearly have been actively trying if you wanted to buy Toad and you know you can't because he's out of stock.
Yeah, I don't know. This Amiibo thing is...
It's really stupid. It's phenomenally stupid. You shouldn't...
But I kind of have fun with it. All right, the big news for me today, or one of the big pieces of news, we're getting into the cool stuff. This is really awesome, and I was happy they finally got on board with this. The Wii U has a pretty... extensive virtual console in terms of the number of platforms they've got on it right now. They've got NES, Super NES, and Game Boy Advance, and now some of those Wii games they've started putting out. Although, after the first 3, they have not done any more, which... I was hoping they would go through the whole library of out-of-print Wii games, like the Fire Emblem game, and put those out, but they haven't done that yet, so that'd be cool. Anyway, however, they are now finally getting those Nintendo 64 titles are going to start coming out, which is great, because previously, if you wanted to play your N64 games on your Wii U... You had to... let me walk you through it. You had to turn on your Wii. You had to grab your gamepad.
Well, you have to turn on your Wii U.
Wii U, yeah. Your Wii U, and you had to grab your gamepad.
Yeah.
And you had to use the touchscreen to navigate the menu. And then you had to open Wii Mode. And then you had to get a Wii Mode out and pair it with your system and match it with your thing. And then you would go into Wii Mode. And then you could launch your N64 games. Let's say Super Mario 64. I own Super Mario 64 on the Wii, so I wanted to play that. So I would do that. So I'm up to 2 controllers now. I would launch Super Mario 64, and then it would tell me I have to connect the classic controller. Now, that doesn't mean I can connect the Pro controller for the Wii U, which is a really nice wireless controller that feels like a modern gamepad.
Yeah, that would be able to map perfectly to any of those N64 games.
Yes. No, you have to take the classic controller from the Wii, which is something that has a cord that you plug into your Wiimote, and then it's got 2 sticks that are very awkwardly placed and buttons that are kind of too far apart, and it's weird, and then you could finally play your game with 3 controllers having been used just to get into that game.
Fuck.
And it would be in super low resolution and stretched, I should also say, because that's how the Wii handles 4x3 content on the Wii U, which is weird. Finally, N64 games, they're going to be releasing them into the eShop, and they will play natively on the Wii U. You don't get to carry over your game saves, which is a little... depressing, but you do get a discount on the titles if you already owned it. So tonight, and this was cool, they announced it and then they were immediately in the eShop. They had Super Mario 64 for the 64. And then they're also starting to release some DS games, which they said they were going to do like 2 years ago, and are finally doing now on the Wii U. And they're releasing Yoshi's Island DS, which if you don't know that game, that is a direct sequel to the original Yoshi's Island, and it's a really nice game. It's a fun game if you like Yoshi's Island. But anyway, those are both on the Wii U. I think the pricing is kind of ridiculous. It's $9.99 a piece.
Ugh.
I don't know. It's...
Wait, even for the DS games?
Yeah.
Jesus.
That's a little silly, I think. Like, that should be the same as... The Game Boy Advance games are $7.99. It shouldn't be more than that.
Yeah, like $7.99 for a GBA game is... That's...
I've only...
pretty hefty asking price, I don't know.
Yeah. I've only bought GBA games that I would put hours and hours and hours into, so I'm okay with, like, Fire Emblem. Mm-hmm. That was worth $8 to me.
Sure,
but, you know, and I should say, one of the things that makes this exciting is Nintendo just does Virtual Console really, really well. Like, the games they put out... They look so good. They look better than they would if you were playing them on an old CRT TV. And I think that's interesting because you get a lot of games now and you're emulating them or something. And really, they're never going to look as good as if you were just on your old TV playing them that way. Because that's what they were created for. That's the pixel density, all that stuff. But I don't know. I think that's because they are rendering them in 1080p or something to make them
they're
look
probably
that good.
Doing some upscaling and some stuff. Like, it's pretty common for a lot of emulation software to put some little tricks in.
Right. So the Super NES games just look gorgeous. Super Metroid looks so good on that. The GBA games look really nice despite being big and pixelated. If the games had nice graphics, they hold up really wonderfully on the TV, and I actually never thought I would like playing a GBA game that much that way. And now N64, I did buy Super Mario 64 because I already owned it on the Wii. It automatically sensed that, and it was only $2 for me. Now, of course, with most modern systems, it would have been free because I already paid for it. But whatever, you are getting new features. You're getting the upscaling. You're getting suspend and restore points. You're getting button mapping to the controller of your choice. So that's all nice. And I was playing it. It's awesome.
I don't think they did this, but they should have put in a thing where when you load up Super Mario 64 at the beginning and his face pops up, you should be able to deform his face on the touchpad.
They didn't. I haven't tried it, but I don't think they've done that. But
this would be a little extra work, but that's something that they totally should have done.
You can do that on the remake for the DS. But anyway, so it looks really gorgeous, and you can play it on the gamepad, I should say, which is nice too, I suppose. Yeah. And it looks so clear. The colors pop so well. You can, customize the controls to your heart's content. You can map any button to any other button, which is nice. It's got suspend resume points. It's got, I assume, some other features like if you want to do smoothing and other graphical options like that. It's got all of that. And I played a couple levels, and it's Super Mario 64, and it remains one of the best games ever made. It holds up so well. It still looks great. It still controls so beautifully. I don't know what happened between that and Sunshine, which controls like shit.
Fucking Super Mario fucking Sunshine. What the fuck, Nintendo? Like, how Super Mario 64 and Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time are two of my favorite games ever of all time. I hate Twilight Princess, and I hate Super Mario Sunshine. What the fuck?
I don't know.
God damn it.
It's weird. Anyway, so and they've announced they're going to be releasing some more DS and 64 games in the coming weeks. So throughout April, they will have WarioWare Touched and Yoshi Touch and Go on April 9th. Those are both DS games. I will say, though, I don't know how Yoshi... I have Yoshi Touch. I actually have most of these games for the DS, so I'm not bothering to buy any of these yet because I have them on my DS, and I'd rather play them that way. But if they ever come out one that I haven't played before, I'll maybe get that to try it out. Because how they do it is they put the top screen on the TV and the bottom screen on your gamepad. Oh. Or you can do it where both are on the gamepad and you turn your gamepad vertical and play it that way, which could work nicely.
Yeah, that seems like that makes more sense than trying to... Moving your head from like the gamepad to the TV, the way you would need to for a DS game that makes heavy use of both of those screens. That seems like crazy.
Because for some games it could work really well, like I think certain RPGs where you just have your inventory stuff on the bottom screen, that could work great.
But anything where because there's a bunch of DS games where the character moves between the screens, and that already was a little bit tricky on the early DS models.
And that's what I was going to say. Yeah. Yoshi's Island and Yoshi Touch and Go both do that completely. You're always going between them. Yeah. You would have to play it on the gamepad. And at that point,
crazy.
The question you have to ask is, why aren't these coming out for the 3DS?
Where the system that is fucking built so it could exactly emulate the way it was played originally on the original system.
Yeah. I mean, it's no skin off my back. I literally own DS cartridges of these games.
Yeah.
I can play them whenever I want, but it is kind of funny. April 16th is our next 64 game, which is Donkey Kong 64. I'll be buying that. That looks fun.
Yeah. Donkey Kong 64 is a game that's fun to play for a little bit, and then you're like, how many things do I have to collect in this game?
I've really never played it, so...
It's like, Wait, how expensive are these again?
$10.
Okay, that's maybe a bit much for Donkey Kong 64 is a fun game to play. I would not pay $10 for it, but if you want to, fucking, go ahead.
Maybe, we'll see.
You can listen to the DK rap to your heart's extent.
I do like the DK rap. Donkey Kong 64 is one of those games, like Super Mario 64, I would play the first hour of on car trips when we would have to stay in a hotel, and they would have the
hotel, yeah.
Which is, that's exactly what I thought of when I booted up Super Mario 64 today, because it felt like playing it through someone else's service.
Sure, yeah.
And, yeah. Alright, and then on April 23rd, Mario Kart DS is going to come out on the Wii U.
And then now we have the most important one on this whole list that I see you brought up here.
Paper Mario, April 30th. And
fuck yeah. That game is fucking amazing.
It is, and I have it on Wii, so that'll be $2 for me, and I will totally replay it.
Yes, Paper Mario is so fucking good. Paper Mario might be the best Mario game ever made, that I've played at least. It's obviously very different.
Yeah.
But like the game that has Mario as a main character in it that I enjoyed the most is definitely Paper Mario, with Super Mario 64 as a second.
Paper Mario also, I should say, has the distinction of having my favorite game advertisements of all time.
Sure, yeah.
I love those, and they are so nostalgic for me. It's where they would have live action things where someone would be taking Peach or Mario and running them through a paper shredder.
Yeah.
And it's super fucked up when you think about it as an adult. But they were really entertaining commercials that sold that idea of we're doing the Paper Mario thing. Which really is just an aesthetic kind of oddity in the game. But that game is unique and fun and funny.
Yeah, there's that one boss in the boot area of that game where the boss is like this big motherfucker who's invincible. And the whole, the story for that section is you're trying to figure out how you kill him, and you go into this windmill because you, find all these clues, and you find out that, he separated his heart from his body, so you have to go destroy his heart to destroy his main body. I think about that boss all the time, because that is, one of the coolest boss mechanics and, character mechanics for a boss in an RPG I think I've ever seen.
Nice.
It's really, that game has such, so much innovative stuff in it that, a lot of modern games could learn a lot from Paper Mario.
Yeah, I am excited to play it again, and I love that it's coming out on April 30th, right around the time I will have free time again.
Yeah.
So
there is a character who is just a penguin version of Ernest Hemingway in that game.
Right!
Yeah. Paper Mario is a real good fucking game.
Yep, and that's the great thing about these virtual console services, is these games are now archived in an easily accessible form. They're going to look better than ever, they're going to play better than ever, and you can get them nice and easily, and the Wii U is a valuable system if nothing else, and I like that about it. So I'm glad we're finally getting these games ported over, so I can play them on my nice adult Pro controller for the Wii U. And I think I might, of this first batch, I might pick up Mario Kart DS just to see what it's like, the DS emulation on the Wii U, just because I'm curious. And Mario Kart DS is a really great Mario Kart game, but again, I do have it on my DS, so
it seems like playing that on a console would be weird when you have
Mario Kart 8, which is
exactly
better.
Console Mario Karts,
or it's better for a console at least, So anyway,
and then you can just play Paper Mario.
Yeah. Anyway, that's cool news, and I hope they keep supporting this, because I am a little disappointed we haven't gotten any more Wii games through this service yet, because I didn't buy any of those. I had the discs of all those games, and I just don't need it. And they were cheap, and I thought about it just to kind of have the archival digital version, but it just wasn't necessary, so, I hope they do more of that. They have Super Mario Galaxy 2 out, get the first one out, and things like that. Get everyone's favorite Metroid game out, Metroid Other M.
You did exactly. Because you really want that Zero Suit Samus thing, right?
I'm going to play Other M at some point, because I'm working my way through the Metroid series, because I really like that series, and I'm so curious about that Metroid game everyone hates. But
you should probably not. I don't know. I have no personal experience with it, but I would.
I'm very curious about it, because it looks so weird. But anyway, let's see. New Fatal Frame game coming to the Wii U this year in North America, which you were telling me was significant, because that series doesn't usually come out here.
Yeah, I mean, it has a weird history, because it's a series of really cult acclaimed Japanese horror games, where the main thing is it's you're playing as these little Japanese schoolgirls, basically, because of course you are, and you have this camera that's sort of the ghost camera, and so the main mechanic of the game is that you have to take pictures of ghosts to sort of defeat the ghosts, which is I don't know, for some reason I feel like I'm describing Luigi's Mansion, but it's super creepy, because it's that total The Ring J-horror kind of thing. I played a lot of Fatal Frame 2. That game is really fucking scary. And yeah, like I did not think that this new Fatal Frame game was going to come out over here. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I do know that if they're smart, like the Wii U version of that game with the gamepad and the camera mechanics could be the fucking like scariest fucking thing ever.
Well, and they do say that it uses the gamepad in kind of the way you would expect.
Yeah, that game is probably really fucking cool.
Allowing them to see things in the environment they cannot see otherwise.
Yeah,
there you go.
Scary, super scary, fucking like drowned Japanese women. You know.
All right, so let's see. The most reviled game to come out on a Nintendo platform in recent memory is
like the most reviled game for the single most specific thing.
Yeah,
like a game that everyone likes except for one thing that everyone just fucking is furious about
and prompts them to give it like a 2 out of 10 and stuff like that. Codename Steam from Intelligent Systems, which I was excited for until I read the reviews because they make Fire Emblem. And this game was reviled because you cannot skip the opponent's turn, and it can take
your turn-based game. Yeah,
minutes and minutes on end.
Yeah, it's basically like if anyone has played the most recent XCOM game, XCOM Enemy Unknown. It's sort of like that same turn-based thing. Only, when the enemy goes, you can't see. And what's crucial is that you don't see the enemy's turn as long as they're like not in your character's field of view. So you are just sitting there watching a progress bar move as enemy characters are moving around. Like, it would be like if you're playing chess and like someone was able to make 10 chess moves at the same time, but you could not see the other player moving chess pieces at all.
So you're just twiddling your thumbs.
Yeah, you're just sitting there like looking at your phone until like the guy's like, oh yeah, I finished moving my chess pieces, and you're like, okay.
Great. Well, anyway, they are adding a fast forward feature in a new update. It'll be a 2x version on original 3DS models, and with the power of the new 3DS, you can go up to 3x.
Yeah, so I guess that must indicate that the problem was that there must have been a huge processing bottleneck or something, and it was not. I mean, obviously, it could not have been that nobody thought of let's put a skip button in. It was just like everyone loves just sitting looking at a black screen. Yeah, it must be that they had to process all those moves, and they found a way to get around that.
All right, here's the most exciting announcement of the day for me, and that is, you guys know, I love the Fire Emblem series. I love Fire Emblem Awakening about as much as I've ever loved a game. It goes on my list of favorite games ever. Little update from our 2013 list.
Sure, yeah.
Number 1, Persona 3. Number 2, Persona 4.
Yes.
Number 3, Fire Emblem Awakening. Fuck yeah, Fire Emblem Awakening.
An exalted position you put it in.
I fucking love that game. It is so good. I'm replaying it right now, and god damn it, is it great.
I maybe should have put Paper Mario on that list now that I'm thinking about it.
Well,
Paper Mario was a game I just did not consider back then.
Maybe when that comes out, I should move the Wii U down here, and we should do a Paper Mario episode.
Sure, yeah.
Revisit that game.
So I played that game all the way through like 3 times. That's a long game.
Oh, wow, yeah.
That game is really fucking good.
And I should say, I don't know if I ever finished that game,
which
is part of why I'm looking forward to revisiting it. But yeah. Paper Mario Revisit episode. Look for it this summer, maybe. Anyway, so Fire Emblem If is the next game in the series. And you heard that right. The title is Fire Emblem If. And it's coming out. So that's the next one. It's the follow-up to Awakening. It's not a direct sequel or anything. If you've played Awakening, you know why. You can't do a sequel to it. And
Fire Emblem games tend to work out that way.
Right. It's just back in the day, the GameCube game had a direct sequel on Wii. And the Game Boy Advance games in Japan, technically the first one we got is a prequel to the first GBA game in Japan. So they've done that before, but just you can't do it for Awakening. So we're getting an all new one, and clearly is built on that same engine, but with a lot more stuff. And so Fire Emblem If has had a brief gameplay trailer before, but now we have a full trailer that has gameplay. It's got animated cutscenes, and it reveals the kind of gimmick of this game, which is really interesting. Is that there's 2 warring nations, as there often are in Fire Emblem.
Yes.
Although actually in Fire Emblem there's usually like 7 nations.
Yeah, but there's only 2 of them are actually important. All the other ones are like smaller nations that are being manipulated.
Yeah. Not in Awakening. Awakening gets pretty politically complex.
Yeah.
But yeah. Let's see. But you're right. So it's usually we got these 2. So it's the story of 2 kingdoms at war, and the 2 are Hoshido and Nor, and Hoshido loves peace. So like the typical Fire Emblem country.
Yeah.
And I love playing Fire Emblem because it makes me imagine this nice world where world leaders want peace.
Yeah, exactly.
And want to work together with other world leaders and be friends.
And have really cool anime battles on on big battlefields.
Why is that so hard?
With giant axes and stuff.
But then Nor, as they say in the trailer, is a glory-seeking nation, and you can pick which one you want to play as. And that sounds super interesting to me because you could have this kind of traditional Fire Emblem experience or from the perspective of, honestly, the villains in this franchise.
Yes.
And that should change things up a lot. They've also done some cool things graphically, like if you're familiar with Awakening, you'll know you've got your grid that's very traditional in the Fire Emblem style, and that's not going away or anything. But then when you go into battles, they would do this zoom in, like a flash to another battle screen, and you would have your characters there, and it was kind of a generic battle screen based on that map in particular and the terrain. What they're doing with If is that it zooms in to the map itself, so you're actually looking at the map from on high, then you go down and you see the surrounding units and stuff too. Which that just seems like that's a cool step forward, and it won't change how it plays necessarily, but it adds that nice layer of sheen to it.
Yeah,
and
that's cool. They're
bringing back some of the environmental stuff they cut out of Awakening 2. Like, I love that in the GBA games you can like break down walls and shit.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
They didn't have that in Awakening, and I kind of understand why. But I like that we're bringing some of that stuff back. You see a guy break a bridge, and then he can go across it. Yeah, and I like that because in the Game Boy games, it's just a pile of sticks that become a slightly more organized pile of sticks.
Yeah.
Now we're in 3D and it's an actual bridge, and that's kind of cool. So we're getting some of that back. That's nice. And then here's what we got to close with, obviously, is Mario Kart 8 DLC. That's coming out soon, and they're adding a 200cc mode. I think that's cool. I like that we'll get a little extra challenge there. And I bought the season pass, so I'm excited for that DLC. But here's what's important, Sean.
Yes. Important.
Two years ago, 2013, Nintendo announced a little game called Shin Megami Tensei X Fire Emblem.
Yes.
There was no gameplay. Well. There was no gameplay footage. There was no cutscene footage, and there was really no confirmation of what the fuck this game would be.
I remember the announcement trailer vividly because it is a series of cut out, like 2D printouts of characters ripped from their games, from their respective games, like the artwork from those games, like put side to side, and the camera kind of moves forward through them, and there's a song playing.
Bizarre.
Yes.
Anyway, so now 2 years later, and we've had really no word on the game since then. At this Nintendo Direct, they released a trailer for Shin Megami Tensei X Fire Emblem.
Yes.
It's got gameplay and all this other stuff. So this game it's a real game.
I saw the trailer, yes.
It's presumably coming out.
Yes.
What is this game, Sean?
I don't fucking know, because we watched the trailer right before we started recording this podcast, and I think the one thing that I was most baffled at was that, it's not like I am a Shin Megami Tensei expert. Like, I've only personally played the Persona games, though I'm familiar with a lot of the other parts of the franchise, just sort of like looking it up and stuff. And I've played a decent number of the Fire Emblem games, and I'm relatively aware of the wider scope of that franchise as well. I didn't see anything that I recognized specifically from either of those franchises. Like, obviously there was a high school setting component to it that was very Shin Megami Tensei or particularly Persona-esque. But there was no character, no demon designs for Shin Megami Tensei or anything that I was like, oh hey, that's that dude. It was just here's a bunch of characters, and some of them are in high school outfits, and there's the town is destroyed maybe, and here's a battle screen for half of a second, and there's some meters on the screen, and I don't know, anime?
The thing is, the game looks good to me.
It does.
It looks really interesting, but I came out of that trailer feeling like I knew less about what this game will be than when I went into it.
Yeah, I have no idea because there's such brief flashes of combat and stuff that I have no idea if it's a tactical game, if it's Shin Megami Tensei turn-based, or if it's tactical Fire Emblem turn-based, or both?
Let me tell you what I think we see. It looks like you have an avatar of some sort.
Yes.
It's her, I think we see in the video, and so you have the school, and then you see her walking around the town. So it's not just a fighting game, and it's not just a combat.
It's definitely an overworld.
Yeah, it's a full Atlas game is what it looks like.
Yeah.
So you have an overworld, and then she goes into what looks like a dungeon or something, and she's walking around. What I saw in a brief glimpse is it looks like those dungeons are navigatable on a lower level, from a personal scale, and then also on a tactical, grid view, which would make it literally Shin Megami Tensei X Fire Emblem in style. And that could be cool. And then the battles are some kind of cross between them. That's the most I can make out.
Yeah.
But it's got great music. It's got a great visual style. I do think it's weird that they didn't put any recognizable characters in this trailer.
Yeah, and the thing about the trailer is that there's no logical progression through it. If you go back to the Persona 5 trailer, it was if you're someone who'd never seen know what a Persona game is, some of that stuff would probably be very confusing. But there's a progression to that trailer that makes sense. This is just here's some 3D stuff, here's some maybe battle stuff, here's some 2D stuff, and it's all just mashed together in super fast cuts. It was very visually impressive, but I have no idea what the fuck I saw.
Yeah, no, I mean, I will play this game when it comes out, unless it gets, like, terrible reviews or something. Yeah. It looks really fun, and, you know, not a ton of Wii games coming out all the time, so that would be cool to play. But it is one of those trailers where it's like, I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe they'll, because this was part of Nintendo Direct, they would like to release, like, a 4-minute trailer that would have room to breathe, and maybe we'll get that eventually, but... Yeah, for now, the confusion over Shin Megami Tensei X Fire Emblem continues.
Yes. This is bafflingly so, because it's like, I thought that game was probably dead. Is that it's not dead. It's just insane.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe next week we're going to get a Last Guardian trailer.
Yeah. And it's, like, even more incomprehensible.
And it will be the PS4's flagship game this year.
It's like, you don't even ever see, like, the weird dog dragging the Last Guardian thing in the trailer. It's just like, nope, it's just like, I don't know what it is. It's just anime now. Everything's just anime now.
They outsourced it to Atlas, and it's about Jack Frost.
Yeah, in high school.
Yeah. Not Jack Frost, the mythical character, the fun little snowman from...
Who is also Jack Frost, the mythical character, in a certain sense, according to the lore of those games.
Hee-ho!
Hee-ho, motherfucker.
Hee-ho? Right, hee-ho.
Hee-ho.
Yeah.
Hee-ho.
I have a Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor Overclocked, I think is the name, on my 3DS. Yeah, something like that. I haven't played it yet. I got it on an Atlas sale for like $10, and I just thought... I might play it one day. It looks good. It's supposed to be a good game. Anyway, but what I like about it, and what has been worth the money, is that the logo on the 3DS screen, when you go hover over that game, it's Jack Frost going, hee-ho! Nice. And I go over that like every time I launch my 3DS.
Nice.
Anyway. And it's him like jumping up and down too, which is great. Alright. Let's go ahead and move on, Sean. That's all the news stuff for this week. Yeah. Oh, Hideo Kojima, kicked out of Konami. What the fuck is going on?
I don't... Yeah, like, Hideo Kojima is the guy he's the Metal Gear guy. Like, he is the head of, like, all the Metal Gear games. He's a complete fucking maniac, if you know anything about that series. And,
nice guy, it seems like, but...
Yeah, but a complete fucking lunatic, if you've experienced any of it,
Or played PT, let's say that.
Sure, I mean, even that's not...
As quite
even,
lunatic,
like, scratching the surface of that fucking...
Yeah.
Whatever Metal Gear Solid is.
It's really weird. They took his name off of everything and have basically confirmed after he's done with 5, he's leaving the company.
I mean, he said, like, leading up to the release of Metal Gear Solid 5, that this is going to be my last Metal Gear game.
He said that about every game.
Yeah, since 2, he has said that about every Metal Gear Solid. And so, I didn't believe it. Nobody believed it. And it was like, hey... Yeah, like Konami, and like the weirdest part about it, it's not that strange. Like Kojima has been there since like the 80s, you know, he's been working on that franchise for fucking ever. So it's not that weird that he's like moving on to do something else. The weird part about it is like how it got out, where it was like his name just got kind of like taken off, like Kojima Productions got taken off some of the artwork for Metal Gear Solid 5, and then there was like the Konami like had some sort of like finance call where all of a sudden on like the new list of like executives at Konami, his name just wasn't there anymore. It was like, Kojima is one of, like, love or hate those games. He is, like, one of the most well-known and well-respected video game developers because Metal Gear Solid as a franchise, again, whether or not you love or hate those games, like, it is a massively, massively influential franchise in video games. And so, it's really weird that you take, like, one of the very few auteur developers in video games and you don't give him any sort of send-off when you're Konami. You know, you just sort of like sweep it under the rug that he's not going to be there anymore.
Let's even take the artistic side of it out and go just for straight, you know, cold hard cash.
Yeah.
He's their cash cow. What the fuck else does Konami have that other than Hideo Kojima?
They make, I think, like gambling games in Japan now.
Okay.
Like, I think that's mostly what they do. Like,
I don't know why you would want to break that hard with the guy who has kept you afloat.
Yeah,
frankly, because that's what he's been doing. I mean,
like nobody liked those last two. Well, I shouldn't say nobody, but most people did not like those last two Castlevania games, which is Konami's other franchise.
Yeah, Konami has a back catalog. That's one of their big things, but they don't make new stuff that much. And you know, obviously, the Metal Gear games they don't appeal to everyone.
No,
but the people who they appeal to they love them, and I think he's clearly done a good job with those games. I don't really get them; they're not my thing. But if that's your thing,
you're a maniac. But sure, yeah,
you're a maniac. But Kojima gets you, and he's put hard work into it and stuff. And I do respect the hell out of those games and their ambition and everything.
Sure, yeah,
it's crazy. Yeah. But I don't. They say they're going to make more Metal Gear games, but I also think, how
like what?
I don't think people want a non-Kojima Metal Gear game.
Yeah. I mean, it's even arguable, like, at this point with that franchise, whether or not, like, you can even do, like, the timeline is so convoluted at some point, like, how do you even fill in, like, there's no other gaps for them to fill in. I don't know, like, how going into the future fixes that franchise in terms of, like, the chronology of the story. Like that stuff is so batshit insane that I don't think Kojima even could handle it anymore, like, trying to, like, progress forward with that franchise.
Yeah, it's a bizarre thing, and it leaves things like the Silent Hills game. No one knows what's going to happen to that right now.
Yeah.
His name's been taken off it, but clearly he's still working on Metal Gear, so...
Yeah, definitely, like, yeah. I mean, that was the press release that came out, basically, when all this stuff leaked. Is Kojima was like, I'm still doing Metal Gear Solid 5. I hope you buy it and like it. And that was basically this, like, read between the lines and peace out, motherfuckers.
Hey, I saw you have on your PS4 Ground Zeroes.
Yes.
Did you play it?
No. I have a dark secret to reveal. I bought the HD collection for Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3 on the Vita. I played through Metal Gear Solid 2. I got a little bit into 3. I should say the reason I did this is because Giant Bomb, which is a website I visit frequently, they've been doing this series of, like, retrospective kind of, like, let's play all the way playthroughs of the Metal Gear Solid franchise, and I watched it for Metal Gear Solid 1, and I was like, well, I have the Vita, and it can play these, like, well-regarded HD remakes of these games. Fuck Metal Gear Solid 2. Fuck that game. The story in that game is fucking bad. It's just bad. But I'm going to play through Metal Gear Solid 3, and I'll probably watch them play through Metal Gear Solid 4, and then I will play Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes, and I will play Metal Gear Solid 5.
Why? You don't like these games. Why are you doing this?
Because there is something about them that is very appealing in how stupid and crazy they are, and from a video game historical perspective, Metal Gear Solid 2 is very interesting, even if the story is fucking fuck the ending of that game. People talk about how it's like this deconstructionist masterpiece of storytelling. You motherfuckers need to learn what writing exposition is and why putting in 3 hours of exposition at the end of your video game is not a good example of storytelling.
All right.
Sean,
we're going to revisit this in an upcoming episode.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I mean, it was actually months ago that I did this, kind of like secretly. All right. And Ground Zeroes was on a sale, which was the main reason I bought it.
We got to come back to this. Yeah. I had a whole different question, but we just got to move on because we're going to go down this road, but just not right now. Because we've got other stuff to talk about. Sean.
Yes.
Bloodborne, go.
Yeah, okay, let's talk about a good video game instead of unlike Metal Gear Solid 2.
Alright.
Let's see how many inflammatory comments I could just make about that franchise. No, so yeah. Bloodborne, for those who are not particularly familiar with it, is the sort of the spiritual successor to a franchise of games that everyone just kind of calls the Souls games. That started with Demon Souls on the PS3, and then there was Dark Souls, which was sort of like the one that people really gravitated to and was very critically acclaimed, and that's the one that I played, and I fucking love Dark Souls. Then there was Dark Souls 2, which was the same developers, but like a different team under the same developers of From Software. And so Bloodborne is the main guy, Miyazaki, he's not obviously Ghibli Miyazaki.
Which would be great.
Yeah, that would be amazing if it was Hayao Miyazaki.
All right, sorry, quick interruption there.
Yeah.
But we were just talking about how Hayao Miyazaki made Bloodborne.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
No, it was.
Where does Totoro appear?
He's the last boss of the game.
Oh, wow.
I've heard, yeah. You just completely brutalize Totoro.
And then you ride away into the sunset in the cat bus.
Yeah, exactly. You just rip Totoro into pieces and take his blood and, like, consume it. Yeah, that's the end of the game. So Miyazaki, who is the sort of the lead developer, you know, when you're talking about, like, kind of like we were talking about Kojima, sort of like auteur video game developers, which is a very rare phenomena. Like, Miyazaki is definitely, like, an example of one of those where, like, he's clearly a very strong, creative, leading voice in the design of those games, and you can really tell because he was not directly involved in the production of the development of Dark Souls 2. Like, he kind of like was very like vaguely involved in terms of like he's the head of the franchise for Dark Souls. But yeah, it was very evident when you played Dark Souls 2 that he was not the leading creative voice behind it, and it's very clear in Bloodborne that he is back on the franchise. And so I talked about Dark Souls 2 when it came out, and I played it on this podcast, and I'll just like briefly go over my thoughts of that, because Bloodborne is basically what I wanted from Dark Souls 2. Not necessarily like obviously like the setting being different is kind of like neither here nor there, but the gameplay changes they made I thought was smart. So like my problems with Dark Souls 2 as a game was that, one, it was a super fucking long game, way longer than it needed to be. And then 2, it sort of did not have the core design sort of cohesiveness that Dark Souls 1 had that made Dark Souls 1 really amazing, which is something that's back for Bloodborne. So, like, in Dark Souls 1, one thing that was really impressive about the level design and the environment design in that game was that everything was interconnected. And, like, no matter where you went, you felt like you knew where you were in that world. And if you were directed to go somewhere else, you could, as long as you're paying really close attention, in the game absolutely demands your utmost attention, you knew where you needed to go. You knew it's like, oh, if, like, you need me to go through, like, if you're talking about a forest, I saw a forest from, like, this balcony in this castle, I know I need to go heading in that direction, that kind of thing. And so Dark Souls 1 had this super cohesive world design that was really impressive. And then Dark Souls 2 did away with basically all of that and had just, like, more linear structured levels that, like, you didn't, like, load into another level in, like a first-person shooter campaign or something. But it was something where it's like, I fought through this, like, whole swamp area and then went into an elevator in, like, a tower and went to the top of the tower, and all of a sudden I'm in, like, a lava palace. And it's like, there's absolutely no way that this area is actually above that area. They just loaded it in. And Dark Souls 2 had a lot of problems like that, where it was obviously, like, it had all the same systems from Dark Souls 1, more or less unchanged. There's a couple of, like, changes to healing and stuff. But, like, it felt almost exactly like Dark Souls 1 mechanically, but it did not have, like, the soul, pardon the pun there. Okay. Yeah, the soul of Dark Souls, it was not there. Bloodborne, none of the Dark Souls 2 problems. Like, I'm near the end of the game, and even if the game, like, and it's sort of like the best feeling you want to have when you're, like, consuming something like this, where I know I'm near the end, but I don't want it to end. I'm kind of bummed that
that's always a great feeling.
Yeah, that the games that I know, it's like I've kind of been putting it off by doing some of, like, the more optional Chalice dungeon stuff, which is these kind of, like, semi-randomly generated dungeons that you can go through to get loot and stuff like that, and more souls and to level up your character. So I've kind of been putting off getting to the end of the game because it's like I just don't want it to be over, And so it's definitely not going to be too long. And then also, Bloodborne really changes up the core loop of the combat in a way that's probably, if, like, going back to Dark Souls 1 would be really, really hard. So the main thing about these games is that they are intensely difficult games, but they're difficult not in the sense that they are unfair. Like, every once in a while there's something that's a little bit cheap. But in general, what's very difficult about them is that the game demands that you learn and master the systems that it presents you with, and will not let you just sort of, like, brute force your way through it.
And I love a game like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's honestly, I was thinking about this when I was playing a lot of Bloodborne, is that it is actually, like, Bloodborne and Dark Souls are two games that I legitimately think that playing through and forcing yourself to complete them makes you a better person. Like, the games are so difficult that you have to approach them in an intellectual and philosophical way. It's such that, like, it sort of forces you to do away with these bad habits that you have, not just in playing video games, but in general life, because the game structure is that you go to, like, series of checkpoints, and then in between checkpoints, obviously, there's all these monsters and stuff, and then at the end of, like, long sections, you'll fight big bosses, and fighting any enemy in the game can basically kill you. Like, unless you're seriously over-leveled and you're, like, going back to one of the early areas, if you take any enemy for granted and just underestimate it and assume it's like, oh, I can just, like, fart through this combat and just be able to get through it, you're going to get your ass handed to you. Like, because you can get killed in a second, you can get taken by surprise, it doesn't fucking matter. I don't care who you are, how good you are at these games. If you're not paying attention and you just, like, are trying to just get through it and not really focusing on it, you're just going to get your ass handed to you over and over and over again. And so the main thing that most people run into when you hit those sections and you're, like, keep on trying to get to the next checkpoint and you keep on getting killed and get put back and have to keep on going through it again and again and again, and then every time you die, you drop the sort of experience points. They call them blood echoes, or, like, souls from Dark Souls. You drop those where you died, and you need to get back to them to get them back, and if you die on the way back to them, they are gone forever. So the game is constantly erasing your progress in all these ways and punishing you for failure in such a way that, like, you naturally get frustrated, and the more frustrated you get, the worse you get at playing the game. And so the game forces you, by being that difficult, but also being so, like, demanding and, like, fun to play and you wanting to get through it, it forces you to stop, to consider what you're doing, to say, I cannot keep banging my head against this and doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. I have to pay attention to what I'm doing. I have to take it calm, take it slow, think about what I'm doing, and come up with better strategies to handle the situation. And the game forces you to do that in a way that it forces you to internalize those lessons, and it legitimately kind of like changes you a little bit, you know? It's a really crazy thing about the game that's kind of hard to get across to people who haven't played a lot of them, but it's like, it really, like, I feel like I will approach when I'm like writing an essay or something, and I keep on trying to write a paragraph, and I'm just like getting really frustrated because I can't think of the right way to phrase it. It's like I think about like playing these games and being like, I have to take a step back and think about the way I would like, if you're running against the boss and you just can't figure out what you're doing, it's like, stop being an idiot and keep on trying to do the same thing that's not working. Just take a step back, think about the situation as a whole, and like think your way around it and find a better way to solve the problem that you're just like banging your head against.
I love that, and I think you're explaining this actually very well as someone who hasn't played these games at all. And I love that video games can do that. Yeah. And I certainly haven't had that sensation on that level because I haven't played Bloodborne or one of these games. But I do love that feeling where it's that, all right, it asks something of you in a way other mediums just can't.
Yeah, like, you know? If you want to keep on getting the rest of the game, you have to become better at the game. Like, you cannot, it is not like a Call of Duty campaign. You can't set it on easy and just fart your way through it. It's like, you have to, and the thing is that, like, the thing about the difficulty of the game is that if you're very dexterous at managing the controls, that definitely helps. But that's not what the game is about. Like, it's about very specific timing and about using the tools at hand to your advantage, and so it's much more tactical combat, and it's very satisfying. And so one of the things that Bloodborne does to sort of change up and actually like really accentuate that aspect of the Dark Souls sort of like game design in a way that like what they change is that in Dark Souls, what like the main sort of character build that most people approached in Dark Souls, and it was kind of what I did, was that the first thing you do is you find a shield that blocks 100% of physical damage, and then when you have that shield, that's like your safety net. Like, you still died all the fucking time in Dark Souls, but you could sort of like have that shield up and be pretty confident that as long as you had enough stamina to take hits and not let it get into your health, like, you could be blocking with the shield, and you could be looking at what the boss is doing, and it's like, if the boss's attack has a little bit more range than I was thinking, I'm fine because I have my shield up. And it was like, it was very comfortable having your shield. And then there's also a bunch of systems like magic and arrows in those games, and bows and arrows in Dark Souls, that allowed you to sort of cheese a lot of scenarios that sort of like get around the main melee combat and be like, well, if I stand in just the right spot and just shoot poison arrows at this boss, he can't quite get me, and I can just get through this with like minimal stress and feeling like a bit of a dirtbag while I do it. Bloodborne strips out all of that shit. There is a very minimal magic kind of stuff in it very late in the game that I can't use because I don't have the stats to use it. But from just reading the descriptions and seeing some videos, it's not like Dark Souls where you could very heavily exploit the magic system in a lot of different ways. And then there is no meaningful ranged combat. You get a couple of throwable, like, temporary weapons that are consumed as you use them. And then you have your gun in your left hand, but the gun weapon in Bloodborne is not used to deal damage at range. Like, it can kind of chip off a little bit of health. It's mostly used as a sort of parry system, where if an enemy is coming to attack you, and you shoot them with the gun at the right moment in their animation, they become staggered, and when they're staggered, you can basically land a critical hit on them. So your gun is your primary defensive tool that you can use to turn around and deal more damage if you are very skilled with using it. But you do not have the shield. Like, there is one shield in the game that is a joke, and the description on the shield basically makes fun of everyone that use shields in Dark Souls and calls them more or less babies for, like, just standing back and using the shield as a safety net. In Bloodborne, it is all about being completely aggressive, completely on your feet. They sort of, like, make the dodging... I wouldn't say the dodging is easier, but the dodging is a little more fleshed out in that it's, like, faster, it takes a little bit less stamina, and it's more of like, instead of these big rolls that you did in Dark Souls when you dodged, it's like a bunch of little quick hops, so it's a lot more sort of like easier to pop, like backstep out of combat and get back in and be very fluid in combat instead of being very sort of like stable that you were in Dark Souls. So Bloodborne is like, one of the things that's fun about that is that, you know, I went in And by the time I got to the end of Dark Souls, I was very good at that game, and because like it forces you to get good at that game. So I was very confident coming into Bloodborne that I was like, I'll be fine. Like I got really good at Dark Souls. I fucking kicked Dark Souls 2's ass. Like that game was fucking easy, basically, for like a Souls game. I beat probably 70% of the bosses of Dark Souls 2 on one try, because that game does not demand as much of you, and you can take all the lessons you learned from Dark Souls 1 right into Dark Souls 2. In Bloodborne, getting through the first area of Bloodborne was probably one of the hardest things I've done in these games, because I had to completely relearn everything I knew about that combat, because it's like, I can't stand back with the shield anymore. Like, I can't do that. I can't use the bow and arrow to get past a large group of enemies. I have to forget all those bad habits from Dark Souls, and I have to approach this new combat. I have to get used to the dodging. One of the really cool systems in the game that I've never really seen in another game before is that when you get hit, it sort of takes off that chunk of your health, but then that chunk sort of remains in sort of a phased area where for a very limited amount of time, if you attack and deal damage, you will be able to get some of that health back. So that's another way that encourages you that it's not about staying back. If you get hit, one of the main ways you can sort of stay in the fight is actually becoming more aggressive, which is the reverse of your natural impulse. But then it also leads you to situations where you become overly aggressive and just try to get in as many attacks as possible, and then that's just going to get you killed again. So the main combat loop in Bloodborne, even if it's the same sort of combat style as Dark Souls, they really focus in on what was core and integral to the combat, which was the rolling dodges and the melee combat and the positioning and the parry system, and they get rid of all the stuff like the magic, the shields, and the bow and arrow that did not make sense for that combat and were ways for you to get around engaging with the main structure of the combat. So with Bloodborne, it's really remarkable to me that for a combat system that is one of the most sort of interesting and engaging that I've seen in games forever with Dark Souls. With Bloodborne, they were really able to look at it critically and sort of learn a lot of lessons from those games and improve upon it in ways that I could not have possibly imagined. And it's one of those things that when you look at Dark Souls 2, it's Dark Souls 2 doesn't do anything like that at all. Not even close. It doesn't have the gall or the balls to remove a system entirely that wasn't working, and it has no sort of none of the balls to sort of add something meaningful to the systems that already existed. It was Bloodborne chucked out and it's maybe one of the things that I'm curious about some of the community reaction to it, because Bloodborne says fuck it and just chucks out magic almost entirely. It says fuck it, chucks out bows almost entirely. It says fucks it, chucks out shields completely. It says fucks it. Chucks out the armor weight system in Dark Souls, because it doesn't matter. It's not what's important. We're not going to let you make a character that doesn't have to dodge because you just exploit the armor values in the game so that you can just tank through bosses. No, fuck that. That's not what this game is about. This game is about you being reactionary and creating interesting tactics in the combat system, and we're not letting you cheese it. And so it just throws out whole character builds that you could make in Dark Souls and says, you can't do any of that shit, motherfuckers. You can't get around it anymore. You have to engage with the core combat in this game in every single combat encounter. You cannot cheese anything in this game.
Damn. Yeah. How many RPGs just say fuck it to magic, of all things? I mean,
yeah, man, right?
That's a big throwaway.
Yeah, and part of that makes that sort of a little bit more natural is that they also completely changed the setting, and that's something that I really love, because I think the setting in Bloodborne is really, really fascinating. Because another thing about the Dark Souls games is that they have a sort of story to them, but the way they tell their story that's very interesting is that it's very sort of baked into the world and the environment design and stuff, and it's very hands-off. So it's the main plot of Dark Souls 1 is very, very simple, but there's a huge amount of sort of very lavish detail built into sort of item descriptions and details that you can pick out of environmental design, and a lot of things that you as the player really have to piece together to sort of construct a more cohesive history of the area you're in. And I did find some of that stuff interesting in Dark Souls, but I never engaged with it too much. But in Bloodborne, because they move it out of this dark fantasy setting and into what at first simply appears to be a very dark Gothic Victorian London setting that then reveals itself. I'll kind of spoil it because it's not a big spoiler. It kind of reveals that it's not just dark Victorian Gothic werewolf London. That the real, which is just what it sort of appears on the surface, it's actually Lovecraftian horror. Like, that's the real setting, because you find out that it's actually all about the sort of like these people who discovered sort of basically the great old ones, and like all these sort of like magical kind of extraterrestrial deity kind of creatures, and it goes full on Lovecraftian horror, but it does not play that card until like 15 hours into the game, when you're just like full, no, this is some sort of like weird werewolf disease kind of setting. It's like, that's not what it is at all, motherfucker. And that stuff is really fascinating because it's, like I said, it's baked into the environment design. And because I like the setting more, maybe I engaged with sort of like paying attention to those details more, because you see sort of a lot of the architecture. You can kind of see where in the history of this city that great old one stuff started coming in, when this academy started sort of like discovering it, because architectural things change. And there's certain statues and certain motifs in the architecture in the statues that appear over and over and over and over again, and sort of like creatures that appear in the architecture that you don't realize what that is or why that looks like how it looks until you get much later in the game, and you start seeing where those designs come from and where that sort of artistic inspiration was coming from, and why those people were designing their art around that without like necessarily being able to see these creatures directly. Like, but none of that is directly explained to you. Like, you don't pick up some like journal entry or some audio log in the environment that's like, well, I'm Sam, and I was here for 2 years ago, and I saw a weird thing, and I decided to make a statue that looked like that weird thing.
I love that you immediately went to the BioShock voice for that.
That's what I think of.
Yeah.
I always think of the audio log in the bathroom that has a giant hole in it in BioShock 1 as like the stupidest audio log to try to explain an environmental detail I think I've ever seen. Like, this guy trying to explain why there's a giant hole in his fucking bathroom walls.
And then left the log right there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you don't have any of that. Like, there's some helpful details in item descriptions, but it's all about, like, you really paying attention to what, like, the small handful of NPCs you meet say, like, what the details of the environment design you run into. Like, there's one area that's kind of hidden away where, like, the sort of the structure of the game is that you keep on coming back to this thing called the Hunter's Dream, which sort of serves as your hub world and where you go to level up and sell and buy equipment and stuff. And then you find this area in the actual world, which is like the architecture in the world of the Hunter's Dream, but in the real world, and it's fucking, and you find some weird shit in there, and it's way fucking trippy, and it's stuff that's like, the game doesn't explain anything about its setting to you. It's everything that's like, you could just walk right through the game and never even realize that it was a Lovecraftian horror setting. Like, because there are definitely some Lovecraftian kind of monsters, but you will never understand the importance they have in that universe unless you really engage with it. And maybe I would have gotten a lot more out of Dark Souls if I had like really kind of pushed that element of it, and I didn't. With Bloodborne, I feel like maybe because I like the setting more, and the setting's a lot more unique, that it's like it really encourages me to look at the environment design and look at the bosses and sort of ask questions about why is this one boss like clutching onto this pendant kind of thing. Like, what can I look at in this like church to sort of reveal what is behind the stories of these characters and these bosses that you run into and where they come from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds really cool. I mean, let me ask a couple questions.
Okay, yeah.
And then we need to move on.
Yeah,
but yeah. First off, so let's say I'm the average gamer or something who has never played Demon Souls, Dark Souls. Okay. I have a PS4 or something, and this sounds like a good game. Would this appeal to me having not played this kind of game before?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I think you need to keep in mind, that the game is going to kick your ass, and that you are going to get very frustrated at first, and that you should not give up. Because that's... Like, obviously, it's a game that's not going to appeal to everyone, and nobody can, like, tell you whether or not you are going to like it. I would say that everyone should give it a shot, because if you do like it, you will fall completely in love with it. Like, that's... Because I should say, like, Demon Souls, before I played Dark Souls, Demon Souls for the PS3 was on PS Plus when I had, like, brief access to a PS3. And so I played some of that game, which has, like, you know, is sort of like the predecessor of Dark Souls. And I got really frustrated in sort of some of the stuff in the first area of that game. And I think that game, a lot of the design elements of that game are not as refined as the later ones. So it is a little bit more frustrating. But I gave up on Demon's Souls, and maybe I would have liked that game a lot more if I had stuck through it and gotten through all the way through like the first world in that game and gone on and experimented with some of the other stuff. But I sort of just gave it up because I didn't pay any money for it. And I was like, well, I don't really need to play this game. It was only after some recommendations from people I know that I decided to really pick up Dark Souls. And because I think they were finding it a little bit more, because I had that experience from Demon's Souls, so I knew the combat, I was willing to stick through Dark Souls to the point where I stopped becoming frustrated at it and started to become very fascinated by it and wanted to learn the systems instead of just giving up on it. So I think anyone could really love these games. It's not anyone's place to say whether or not you're going to like it because there are no games like it. I can't say like, oh, if you like Call of Duty or if you like third-person action games or if you like RPGs, you will love these games because it's a completely unique mix of third-person action and RPG elements. But I think everyone should give them a shot and keep in mind, try to stick through it and keep in mind the things that I was saying about like, if you're getting very frustrated about something, don't keep on banging your head about it. If you need to walk away from the game for a little bit and calm down and try to come back to it, and keep in mind that the combat in the game is about tactics, it's about strategy. Think about what you're doing before you do it, and if you are, willing to do that, you will ultimately be able to succeed because you do not have to be some maestro of video games to be able to get through this. Like, I think anyone who is at least like competent at being able to manipulate controls can beat these games. It's not like Silver Surfer on the NES that's just like this brutally difficult game that like most people can't beat just because they can't manipulate the controls to do it. The only reason you will fail to beat Dark Souls or Bloodborne is because you give up and that you are not willing to sort of fully commit to the game and fully like master the systems of the game and do what the game is trying to get you to do.
All right, well, cool. I think, there's more we can talk about this when you're done with the game, maybe on next week's show. But for now, I think that's a really good note to end on with this discussion, I think. So let's go ahead and move on. I want to talk about a game I finally finished recently. And you just talked about a game you played, a long game you played. Yes. And I'll talk about a long game I played. So Persona Q, Shadow of the Labyrinth, Persona spin-off, Etrian Odyssey, stylistic spin-off. We love Persona here, and got a 3DS, so of course I was excited for Persona Q. It came out back in November, and while I had not finished it by the end of the year, it did place number 3 on my list for the year. Finally, I had some time to go back and finish the game, and having finished it, I would not move it up or down. That feels like the right placement for me where I had it on the list. And maybe that says I'm slightly disappointed in the back half of this game, because you talked about Dark Souls 2 being too long.
Yes.
I don't think Persona Q has like the soul-crushing problem with length. Yeah. It is too long. It took me... My play clock is like 67 hours. My 3DS record, which shows more accurately like times I would have like wiped or something, is 75 hours. So that's how much time I put into it. That's about as much time I spent on Persona 4 itself. Yeah. And Persona 4 is, feels much longer in some ways because
it feels
its
like
story
a year
is
of your
bigger.
life.
Yes.
Yeah, like that's a game that's very dense.
I said this to you the other day because I said, man, Sean, I spent 75 hours in this game, and you're like, whoa, that's a Persona-length game.
Yeah.
And what I said is, it is. It's not a Persona-length story.
Yeah.
And I think that is the issue of length here, is that the story in Persona Q is really good, and a lot of the story stuff in it is great. A lot of the character interactions are just so wonderful. The people who work on Persona games, and it's a lot of people at this point, on the animes and on the spin-off games and everything, they all seem to have a really nice understanding of how to write these characters, and that's wonderful, and that's nice. But ultimately, Persona Q is kind of a Persona short story relative to other Persona, the big Persona experiences, because it's really not about the Persona characters you know and love. They're there, and they're a big part of it, but their arcs are not significantly advancing. This game is really about Zen and Rei, who are the new characters in the game. Sort of like, as I understand it, Persona 4 Arena is very much about... who's the character in that? Labyrinth.
Although Persona 4 Arena and Ultimax also have the benefit of the Persona 3 characters being post-Persona 3.
Okay, yeah.
So they have like a good 4 or 5 characters that have a lot of new ground to cover.
Yeah.
Than with Labyrinth having her whole complete unique character arc.
Yeah, and brief recap of what Persona Q is it's an Etrian Odyssey style dungeon crawler where you draw your maps on the bottom screen of the Nintendo 3DS, and then you navigate the dungeons on the top, and you've got random encounters. And the stories, the Persona 3 cast and the Persona 4 cast, have each been plucked from right around the middle of their respective stories. And they've been thrust into this new universe where Zen and Rei, who are these new characters, are. Zen is kind of this brooding guy, and Rei is this little girl who loves corn dogs.
Yes.
And everything. And Rei's, she's super happy, and then eventually she's super sad, but we'll talk about that later. And so you have to get through these labyrinths to try to get back to your world. All right, so, as I've said, you can't really move the Persona 3 or 4 characters forward all that much, because... particularly the Persona 3 characters, because,
they have not been through the shit yet.
No, because Shinji is still alive.
Yeah.
And so that's a big one.
If you play Persona 3, that tells you a lot about where that is in the story.
That's the turning point in a lot of ways. Yeah. So there's that in Persona 4, they're kind of still in their halcyon days, where everything is... There's been some darkness, but it's okay because they're friends and there's no test yet.
Yeah, they don't yet know about, who the culprit is and that kind of stuff.
Or just how sad Nanako will become.
Yeah, which really changes the tenor of those characters and stuff, yeah.
But, they still do a great job with the characters. The best scene in Persona Q, and it is worth playing all 75 hours for, is a about hour-long stretch you do with Marie, where you take her out of the Velvet Room, as she often likes to do, and go adventure around, and you have this, nice long, what they call stroll, where you take the character out, and it's just this long section about Marie. It doesn't have any of the Labyrinth stuff. It's just about her character, and you do some stuff for her, and it is... just as good as all the Marie stuff in Persona 4. And at its best, Persona Q is at that level of character work. There's also one about... Naoto, that is, where you solve a mystery with Naoto, and it's stupendous. Some of that stuff is stupendous. But, like I said, the story is about Zen and Rei, and so much so that when you get to the end, and I think you feel the full weight of that, it feels a little thin because they didn't... You spend so much time in the game, but you spend so little of it really on that core story because so much of it is in those dungeons, grinding through, that kind of thing, Yeah. It doesn't have that tightness of something like a Persona 3 or 4. And in terms of length, the game on a gameplay level peaks in the second Labyrinth. And it peaks hard. The second Labyrinth is fantastic. It's a really fun stretch of the game. It is so enjoyable to play and to experience, and it's creative. You've seen some of the group date cafe stuff on YouTube.
Okay, yeah, that's the second dungeon, yeah.
And, it's terrific, and it's a really, really good section of the game. It's so creative how it mixes the character and the Labyrinth side of things, and it's just, I think, a fun design for the dungeon. And then I think dungeons 3, 4, and 5, frankly, the Labyrinth 3, 4, and 5 are very grindy. They get a little too complex and too clever for their own good. There's some good character stuff worked in, but it's limited. It's not as much as you would maybe want. And some of that is disappointing to me. I think a tighter version of this game would have been a better version. Then again, I know part of the audience they're aiming for likes it when you get to grind for decades on end.
Yeah.
So, there's that kind of thing. And none of the labyrinths are bad. None of them made me want to, throw my DS against a well. Sometimes I did because I would wipe after 2 hours of progress or something. Because the difficulty spike gets pretty crazy at a certain point.
You lost your souls and you're like, God fucking damn it.
Yeah, no.
I know that feeling.
But, when I talked about Persona Q on the top 10, and then when we reviewed it for the first time, a little earlier than that.
Yeah.
One of the things I said was I found the Labyrinth system in this game more engaging, just on a pure, comparative level, than maybe the Labyrinth system in Persona 3 or 4, the dungeon system. They're not Labyrinths in that game. I would retract that now, and it's not like I regret saying that, because at the time I think that's true. If you play 20 hours of Persona Q, I think you can feel that. Mm-hmm. Because it's a much deeper, and anyone would admit it, it's a deeper system, it's got a lot more going on. The combat itself is not necessarily deeper or less deep, it's just a little different. But there's so many moving pieces that it is really fun to go through those dungeons for a while, but I don't think it's as kind of infinitely repeatable as something like Persona 3 or 4 is. There's something so elegant about the way Persona 3 and 4 handle dungeons, which is that they're these randomly generated environments with a certain set aesthetic theme, and you go through them, and it's not random encounters. You can choose when you do or don't want to fight, and there's something very strategic about that. There's an exploration aspect, but it's not so heavy that consumes you or becomes annoying or becomes a bar to progress, Mm-hmm. And then the battle system is so deep that it really is kind of infinitely repeatable. I should say, it's not so deep that you need to find a line, because battle systems can be too deep for a game like this, honestly. Yeah. That can totally happen. And I think Persona 3 and 4 nicely, and 4 especially, nicely straddle that line, where there's enough depth that it really stays fun for all 80 hours, but it's not so bogging down that it gets you into it too much. And
I mean, that's actually, having played the older Persona games, that's kind of one of the smart changes they made with 3 and 4, was that the older Persona games have, probably 2 times, or maybe even 3 times the number of different damage types, including elemental and various different physical attacks, that just, make it impossible to be able to reasonably strategize with all those together, whereas, Persona 3 and Persona 4 pare that down into a much more manageable set of elemental types. and like that allow you to sort of actually build strategies around that instead of being like there's so many that you can't account for all of them.
No, I totally agree. And Persona Q has a sort of pared down and also bolt up kind of version of the Persona 3 and 4 fighting system. So it's got that whole elemental system, but because of the new sub-persona system they have, where you are not the wild card, everyone has at least one everyone has exactly one sub-persona in addition to their main one. That creates this level of complexity on it too, and then this aspect of grinding that makes the difficulty spikes. They're not fair, they're not fun, they're not interesting. When you go into a new dungeon and suddenly you get through an entire floor and then someone just can wipe your entire party in one hit and you can't dodge it and they go first. It's like, oh, great, that was fun.
Right, yeah.
I enjoyed that. I don't enjoy that, It's not fun. And so I think that, coupled with the fact that the Labyrinth stuff is fun for a certain length of time, but I think also, once you've done the puzzles once or twice, even if they make them more complex and creative, I kind of feel like I've done it before. And it doesn't have the kind of simple power of something like the 3-4 dungeon system that keeps it infinitely interesting.
Yeah.
And not infinitely, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying. That with like 3 and 4, the dungeons are very simple and straightforward with like enough branching paths that you could go down to like try to get like another chest or something, but not so much that like you're stuck on like the same dungeon floor for like an hour trying to like navigate everything all your way around it and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that side of it, that's where the game becomes too long. And I wouldn't tell them to change much about the Labyrinth or combat system. I think it's really good. There just didn't need to be this much of it.
Yeah.
And the later Labyrinths, maybe you could do the effective 5 Labyrinth version of this game, but 3, 4, and 5 would all have to be significantly shorter. And I think they should have picked one of these to cut, or maybe make it exclusive to one side of the story or the other, or something like that. Because as it stands, it's just, you get through, particularly so they tell you the whole game, there's going to be 4 labyrinths, and they're lying, because that's how it works, right?
Yes.
There's 4, and then there's going to be a 5th.
Yes.
But it is still paced in such a way that you get through that 4th, and you are ready to finish the game. Because at the end of the 4th dungeon, the big turning point in the story happens, and I'll talk about that in a second. Actually, I'll talk about it now, because this informs what I have to say about it.
Sure, yeah.
Persona Q takes an insanely dark turn. And it's... If I were to just describe it, you might... And I shouldn't spoil this, because you might play it someday.
Yeah, don't.
Okay, that's fine. It gets really dark. The stuff with Zen and Rei, and when I say why the game is about them, the themes it has to explore, they're the kinds of questions about life on Earth that have no easy answers, and you can't reduce, and are really, really painful to think about. And they're the kinds of things we try not to think about. And I commend the game for going there and trying to tackle that, because that's what Persona 3 and 4 are all about.
Yeah.
Is tackling those questions we try to ignore. And I think Persona Q does that too. And the problem is, the scene where all that hat goes down, it's a really good scene. I think it's probably too much of a tonal shift. Like, maybe we could have built to that rather than fun. I want to cut my wrists, that kind of thing. And so you do that, but you get really engaged. You get misty eyed. All of that. It effectively gets you into this story and the intense high drama of the story. And then, before you really move that story forward anymore, you have an 8-level labyrinth to do to finish the game.
Like, and how long is that to clear through?
Along 10 hours.
Okay, yeah, that's...
Yeah.
That's
I mean, it's every other labyrinth in the game is basically 4 floors.
Oh, okay.
And I should say, the one in the 8th floor labyrinth is about as long as it takes time-wise, because 6 of those floors are really short.
Okay.
But it's still like, if they had done like a 2-level labyrinth that was maybe 2 or 3 hours, I think it could work. Yeah. I really do.
Because it's still like, you're talking about 1/5 worth of the in-game combat kind of stuff.
Yeah. That you have to move through and also they have to kind of, to keep you going through that, a lot of the stuff tries to be fun and funny again, and you can't take the turn they take and then go back to humor. You really can't. It would be like if, Persona 3 gets through the Shinji stuff, and the next day isn't Akihiko at the altar crying, it's another, fun social link with...
Yeah, or, if, in, the sort of the ending section of the game, there's, one kind of time jump.
Right.
In that time jump, it's, super happy, fun time! And then you get to the end of the game again, it's, huge tonal fluctuations.
Yeah, that totally... That does not entirely work. And then you get to the end, and I think the ending is very nice. It wraps things up well. I don't think it fully accounts for the questions it raises in terms of that darkness, because, one, I don't know if you can, And 2, if you can't do it in this format. It's you need more time with it. I think the message the game comes to, I'm conflicted about it, because on one level it's a really nice message that is very in keeping with Persona, but I also think they kind of missed the larger point that I got out of the game, that if they had really hammered in on it, would have made it a very profound experience about the experience. This isn't spoiling anything, just to say that I think what the game is about, without maybe realizing it, is that the experience of life and being alive and enjoying things is more important than being able to quantify that.
Sure. Okay, yeah.
And that is a theme that I think is in Persona 3. It's in Persona 4.
About how much you love corn dogs. It's not about how many corn dogs you have.
That's a good way to describe it, maybe. But I do think that's a theme of the game, and I think it plays into it with... And again, I know the specific, we're going to sum up the message scene here that they do, which Persona 3 and 4, to be perfectly fair, they also do that. I mean, I guess his final speech in Persona 3 is, here is the message of the game.
Yeah, more or less.
It's just done well enough that it makes you cry. And this one, I think, it oversimplifies the issue and maybe doesn't fully account for it, because they do want to leave you on a certain level of uplift. But overall, I think they do a good job with the tone and the content at the end. And, we've talked before about how every Persona game, its last song, the end credit song, is the best. But maybe Persona Q breaks that on the soundtrack. That's not the best song. When you see it in context, that song works phenomenally well. And I've listened to it since then and been like, okay, remembering my experiences with the game, this is a really powerful song. Memories of You in Persona 3, I always loved that song, but especially once you finish the game, it takes on a whole nother weight.
Yeah, definitely.
And this is not that good. My favorite song in Persona 3, or Persona Q, is definitely the opening. Maze of Life is one of the best Persona songs ever. Song. It is so good. But anyway, so those are basically my thoughts on Persona Q. It is a flawed game. It is absolutely not for people who are not Persona fans, obviously. You have to know either 3 or 4. But here's the thing. If you like 3 or 4, or preferably both, and you do enjoy those games and have affection for them, Persona Q is a must-play. The character interdynamics are just fantastic throughout, and it's a nice treat consistently to get to spend time with these characters in this setting. The gameplay is fun. It gets repetitive and grindy, and it is too long. But, there are worse problems to have. It's not like it breaks the game. And ultimately you get a story that does leave you thinking... while also making you wonder if human life is even worth it.
And the answer, of course, is no.
It's just, I mean, it is fun. I mean, you look at some of the stuff in Persona Q and the tone and how fun it is, and just... Rei is the happiest character ever! There's no way there's something that dark in her backstory. Oh, God! Oh, God! You're like Nanako pumped up to 11.
Those are some fighting words. Man, Nanako's a pretty sad character.
Yeah, Rei's got her beat.
I'll have to take your word for it until I play the
Anyway,
game.
I mean, the thing with Nanako, though, is it's this consistent, soul-crushing sadness for
with
80
Nanako,
hours.
is it for every single day you go home and she's sitting in front of the TV, just completely alone.
And broken.
Yeah, just singing, the happiest moment in her life is when a fucking department store commercial comes on and she can sing the jingle.
Here's the thing. Let me sum it up this way. This is how I can sum up where Persona Q goes. Imagine if you took all the collective sadness of Nanako from Persona 4 and introduced all of it and had it hit you in basically one set of cutscenes and another at the end.
Jeez, yeah, okay.
All at once. Fuck it. You're getting all of it. And there's hints, but no, you're getting the full weight of that sadness. And it's the kind of thing where I'm watching it with my jaw dropped going, this is sad. I feel really bad inside. Anyway.
As you should.
And I hope if you ever do get a chance to play this game, we can talk about this so I don't have to be so goddamn vague.
Yeah, okay.
But it's... Because it is interesting to talk about, as these games always are. But yeah. No, Persona Q, very good. I think just shy of greatness. And obviously it is not Persona 3 or Persona 4, but I said this when it came out, and I still believe it. It's a better game than it has any right to be. It is fan service the game. Yeah. And it has legitimate claims to really, impressive qualities.
It's, hearing you talk about, the story in Persona Q, it reminds me of more or less how I feel about the stories in Persona 4 Arena and the sequel. In that, they're definitely really good, and if you really like the characters, you absolutely should play it. But, the story is not as good as Persona 3 or Persona 4. Obviously, it can't go there. But the stuff that they do, particularly with the original characters, is really interesting, and it's definitely worth the experience.
And it looks great, too, I should say. I love the chibi art style. You get used to it really fast, and it's just really nice and fun. And, it is clearly the game was too big to fit on a 3DS cartridge because everything is compressed to shit, especially the sound.
Yeah, I noticed that with the videos I've seen.
I would hope maybe Nintendo will start loosening that up, that maybe you can just make your game bigger for download and I don't know, maybe they could do a 2-cartridge approach. I don't know, but I think the cartridge is getting to be a limiting thing at this point. And I know the new 3DS games are going to have bigger cartridges, so...
But how many games are they going to make that exclusive for the new 3DS?
There's only one announced so far, so probably not many. Let's talk about the new 3DS really quick here at the end.
The new Nintendo 3DS.
Yeah, so I bought the new Nintendo 3DS over break because I'd wanted it anyway. My brother had it, and I'd played it a couple times with him, and it was really nice, and I finally got bored and was like, all right, I want my new 3DS. I have the money. Why not? I use this system all the time. It's not a stupid investment. Right? And especially after playing it, I'm really happy I got this thing. It is such a huge improvement. I think it's the nicest handheld Nintendo's ever made. And, the only question is, why couldn't some of this be in the original model? Just like when I got the XL, I was kind of like, why couldn't this be in the original model? So 3 times, took them 3 tries. And I should say, I love the 3DS XL. That's a great system. If you have that already, or you're looking to get a cheaper model, you can't go wrong. It's really nice. It's well built. It's a really good system, and I love the feel of it. But the new 3DS is where it's at. It's really nice. So I got the black edition, which you can see here. All black.
Yes.
And I kind of like that. This looks like one of the more adult systems Nintendo has made. I can play this at school and not feel quite... I feel a little self-conscious.
You don't feel 3DS. Like a 12-year-old...
Because my old 3DS was just bright red on the outside.
Yeah.
And I felt a tad self-conscious playing that.
Like put a bunch of Pokemon stickers on it.
Now, this looks good. It is glossy on the front and back, and that actually feels good when you're playing. It feels kind of nice and cool to the touch, but it does pick up fingerprints pretty easily, which... I don't love. That gets me a little neurotic, but it's okay. It actually hides them better than some systems like this do. Like, even the original 3DS, which was all gloss everywhere, which was a terrible idea. I don't know why you would do that. That picked up fingerprints worse than this thing does. So, and that was blue, not black. So anyway, you open it up. On the inside is this nice matte material that actually feels really good. It's really nice to the touch. It's very comfortable. The big changes are the addition of the C-Stick.
Yes.
The nub. And they have moved, and they've added this stabilized 3D feature. And I guess I'll start there because, there's enough other enhancements with the new 3DS that I think it's a solid upgrade. But what makes it a great upgrade is they've made the 3D great and kind of achieved the promise I think they always wanted to have with the 3D on the system, which was that it's easy, simple, accessible, portable 3D that has no barriers to use. And... the problem with the original 3DS and the 3DS XL, which uses basically the same 3D technology, is there is something nice and commendable about having it glasses free, so it's just easy. You flip it on and play. You've got the slider, which means whatever your eyes can take or you want your eyes to take, you can just do it. You don't have to worry about, it's locked in at something. You can adjust that. That was always nice. You can also turn it off, as many or most people did, and just play it in 2D, where it also looks nice. So those are all nice features, and the 3D, when you got it in the sweet spot, could look really, really good, and certain games that were made to really utilize that on a graphical level just could look really great and be better that way. And the best example is always going to be Super Mario 3D Land, because that was created from the ground up with 3D in mind. And it's unlike any other platformer you've ever played because of how it plays with depth, and you just can't play that game in 2D. I mean, you can if you want, but it's such a more shallow, and in some cases, I think, unfairly difficult experience, because that's not what it was made for.
Yeah.
And, there's other ones like Star Fox 64 3D, which just, at its best is, and I'll talk about that a little bit, because the 3D on that can be really cool and kind of simulation-esque, like Star Fox always is at its best, kind of an arcade sim kind of fighter, which is fun, or flyer, which is fun. So anyway, but if you weren't in that sweet spot, which was pretty much always, the 3D would just blur, or it would look kind of ghosty, like it would have ghost images on everything, or it would just look kind of shimmery, if that makes sense. Which you see sometimes even in theaters with back when 3D was just getting started with this new wave sometimes. So what they've done with the new 3DS is they've added a head tracker next to the front-facing camera that keeps focus on where your head is and adjusts the 3D at will. They've also done a lot, I think, with the internals to make the 3D just look clearer, look nicer, tighten up the visuals. Everything about it has really been made better. But they call it the Super Stable 3D, and they are not kidding. This is one of the only cases I can remember maybe of a company under-advertising what they've achieved. It's not just that they made it more stable. They made it kind of foolproof, because you turn it on, maximize it if you want, And you can kind of hold it wherever you want. You can move your head. You can move the system. You can be, you can't like shake it or anything. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. I don't know why you would do that. But the 3D stays on.
That's how I like to experience my video games, just like jostling.
Yeah.
Like crazy.
And the 3D stays on, and it looks clear and it looks solid. And at any level, it looks much clearer and better and brighter than it ever did on the old models of the 3DS. So there's that. Mm-hmm. But just that stability means you can play this exactly like you would have played your games in 2D. And there's no eye strain, there's no, headaches that can come with it, and there's no, I have to make sure I'm holding this in exactly the right way, and I can't do it on the bus, and I can't do it anywhere but, I don't know, my chair at home that is in the right angle or something. Yeah. So, I have basically kept the 3D on almost always when I'm playing. Sometimes when I'm maybe grinding through something for fun, and I'm just watching a podcast or something, or watching TV, I've turned it off because flipping back and forth would make that tough. Mm-hmm. It understandably confuses the head tracker. Yeah. So that's, but I wouldn't need the 3D then anyway. And there are games that I never played in 3D because I didn't think it was that impressive that I'm replaying because they look so good. Chief among them, Super Smash Brothers for 3DS. I basically never turned it on in the 40 hours I first played in it. And now I keep it on all the time, and it looks really good for a side-scrolling action game that shouldn't need 3D. Mm-hmm. It looks really neat, and more than anything, it's just the graphics pop. It's not so much about you're going into the game. It's just the graphics look crisper, nicer. Everything has more outline and distinction, and I think specifically for being a portable version of a series that in the past has kind of required a big screen, it makes characters seem more distinct, and that helps. It really does. So there's that. I've been replaying Fire Emblem Awakening, which I played maybe half and half in 3D back in the day, but ultimately, I think by the second half of that game, I was playing it pretty exclusively in 2D because once I was really into it, dealing with 3D stuff just wasn't worth it.
Yeah, especially because, playing that game, it's like such long individual sessions. I imagine 3D would get tiring.
Yeah, but now I mostly play it in 3D, and it looks really nice. That game it's not as good as some other Nintendo games in terms of how it uses 3D. There are environments where there's still ghosting for me, particularly in the dark where there's light sources. And, I don't think there's probably just no way to fix that. But and then it is also a game where I play it with the 3D turned down about halfway just because it looks better to my eyes. But again, I like that you can choose that option. And then I went back and replayed the campaign of Star Fox 64 3D like several times because it's an hour-long campaign and it's meant to be replayed. And honest to God, I just felt like I was in space. Flying with Star Fox, listening to Peppy, doing my barrel rolls, and it was just
letting
really cool.
Slippy get shot down.
Yeah, so he'll stop talking to you.
Yeah.
Because it looks so good. And that was always one of the better looking 3DS games, and always looked good in 3D, but the way you play that game, you kind of have to be moving the system because it's so intense.
Yeah.
And I didn't play it much before. I've had that game for 4 years, and I've never done much with it, and now I've been really enjoying playing that game because it looks so good. And eventually I'd love to go back and replay Super Mario 3D Land like this, because that's playing that game the way it was meant to be played better than ever. So that's really cool. So I really like the new 3D stuff. I still don't think it's going to be for everyone, That's just the nature of something like this.
Yeah.
But I think it's gone beyond just being a gimmick. And I don't think it ever was just a gimmick on this system, because there are enough games that really do use it for artistic value. And to make games look good. But before, the technology was imperfect. Now it's very good, very impressive. And more than anything else, it does what a portable system should do. It's easy to just pick up and play and use. And that's nice.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's too little too late, but, we'll see.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that also we kind of talked around it a little bit, but the internals of the hardware is a little more advanced.
Yeah.
So they've said that there are going to be games that take advantage of that will have to be exclusive to this version of the Nintendo 3DS. And right now, the only one is Xenoblade Chronicles, which is a remake of a Wii game. And it'll be like, I doubt that there's going to be a lot of new Nintendo 3DS exclusive games. I feel like Nintendo has kind of like done stuff like this in the past and has never fully taken advantage of it. Kind of stuff like the expansion pack in the N64 and stuff like that. This has never been like fully supported in a very integral way. And maybe you don't even want it to be, but it's something to sort of like keep in mind.
And who knows, this system has sold phenomenally well in every territory. It outsold the PS4 and Xbox One in February here, which is a pretty impressive achievement.
Yeah.
So, it's doing well, and we'll see what happens to it. And there are games that are going to be variable, that they can take advantage of that extra power while also being backwards compatible.
Yeah.
So Majora's Mask does that, Smash Bros. Does that. So we'll see.
Yeah, and then obviously games can take advantage of the like additional control stuff like the nub.
Well, that's what I was going to talk about next, because all the design changes, most of them I really like. I'll just get the one out of the way that I don't like. They moved the stylus from the side to the bottom. That's unfortunate. I don't think it could have been on the side anymore. I think there's too many buttons here now.
It also reminds you that you still have to use styluses on touchscreens for some reason in this day and age.
And for some games, I do think it's better than just randomly touching it with your hand. Like, I wouldn't want to do that in Persona Q and make the distinct lines and stuff. The stylus makes sense for that. But I did make sure to finish Persona Q before I bought this, because you have to take the stylus in and out so much. I didn't want to do it down here where it is more inconvenient. So that's not the perfect placement for it, but whatever. The buttons feel so much nicer. And I'm talking about A, B, X, Y, start, select, the control pad, or the D-pad, and the circle pad, I guess you would call it. Yeah, circle pad. They all feel just tighter, better, springier. The whole thing controls better. And as I said, just the material the main face is made out of just feels really nice too. I like the colored buttons like the old SNES. That's nice. And then the big addition is the C-Stick, or C-Nub, as you should more accurately call it. Very few games that I have use it, but anything that previously could have worked with the Circle Pad Pro accessory will support it now. And there's lots of games coming or have come that are going to use it more, like Majora's Mask 3D, Xenoblade will use it, Monster Hunter uses it. And Smash Bros. Is the one I've been using it a lot with, because you can do as you would on a controller going back to Melee.
Yeah.
And do your smash attacks on it. And that has opened up whole new possibilities for me in Smash Bros. I really have gotten back into that. I've played like another 20 hours in it. And it's so fun to be able to go back and do that, because it feels like I'm playing it on the console more, and it allows me to do challenges and stuff that were more difficult when I didn't have that full range of controls.
Yeah, because doing smash attacks with the circle pad from my limited experience was like the most frustrating thing about
it's just too imprecise. But now, and the C-Nub, I should say, if you haven't used it, it's hard to explain. It doesn't move. I mean, you can feel that if you want. Yeah. It's bizarre.
Yeah, it's a laptop nub, is basically what it is. Anyone who's used one of those.
Yeah. So it's like a laptop nub, and, but it's very sensitive, and it works. So with the smash attacks, at least, I've never been, like, inaccurate with it. I can do it however I want, and it responds. I have the Monster Hunter 4 demo kind of just to try out what the camera would be like, and that works well. It works fine for, I think, that kind of third-person action game, maybe. Yeah. I would never want to play a first-person shooter like this.
Yeah.
But as I said before to you when we were off the podcast, I wouldn't want to play one on the Vita either. And I like the Vita sticks.
Like playing a first-person shooter in like a portable format with like the size of the screen even is like a detriment beyond just even the control interface.
So I think we could debate forever what would be the best controls for the 3DS, but the C-Nub is a nice little solution, and I think what matters most is it does make the games that support it better.
Yeah.
And that's what matters most, right? It's...
Yeah, and it's also like a thing, like you said, with like the Circle Pad Pro, and like the fact that there have been things that like that in the past for the 3DS that had similar functions, means that even if it's not going to be a new Nintendo 3DS exclusive game, most of the games will probably support it in some way if it makes sense in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really nice. So, that's great. All of the internals have been bumped, and the system is much faster overall to launch, to load in all of the games. It's faster. That's nice. And there have been little changes. Like, I like that the power button has been moved down here. I like that, so I don't accidentally hit it or something where it was before. And because I mostly keep this in sleep mode, I don't have it in sleep mode right now, but mostly I have it like that. It makes sense for the power button to be somewhere where you don't need it much. This is a system that just stays on. Kind of like the Vita puts it on the top, out of the way. Mm-hmm. Same thing. I do think it's weird just because I've owned DSs for 11 years now. They moved the game card slot for the first time ever, and it's on the bottom now. Doesn't create a problem because they've created a little ridge there, so you're not like touching it when you're holding the system. Yeah. But it is different. It's worth noting. And the fun part, this is always the fun part of Nintendo systems, was getting the damn thing set up. Right. Because you have to do the transfer, which we've talked about this before. You got to get both systems, hook them to the internet, link them to each other wirelessly, and then you do the transfer and you watch the Pikmin carry over your stuff with percentages that make God knows how little sense.
You're like, what the fuck is a block of memory? What are you talking about, you maniacs?
Right. And then on this one has a micro SD card slot. So if you want to upgrade your micro SD card, which you basically have to, because here's the funny part, comes with 4 gigabyte micro SD card. If you want to play the first and so far only new 3DS exclusive, Xenoblade Chronicles 3D, you will need a bigger SD card.
Yeah.
That is so, it'll be like you buy the PS4, you go to install your game, and it's, the hard drive wasn't big enough.
It's like, I need 3 more gigabytes of memory.
Yeah.
This seems like an oversight.
So anyway, kind of crazy. So you have to take 2 screws off the back, get the faceplate, this back plate off, which requires taking the stylus out, which has, you'll see this little ridge on the back. And then you use that to pry this off. It's actually kind of a nice, elegant solution because when it's all back on and everything, it's easy to get off, and when you put it back on, there's no give to this. It's all very tight. And if you ever used an old 3DS XL, the back panel was just loose, and I could like play with it and just flick it because it would kind of half off.
Sure.
And I'm talking about like after the first day too. This was not I abused it horribly and that happened. It was just loose, and the whole system like was just creaky and kind of plasticky. This does not feel like that at all, so that's kind of nice. But yeah, to get to the micro SD card slot, you got to take that off. It's like kind of replacing the hard drive in a laptop. Not as involved, but it feels like the portable game system equivalent.
Yeah.
But, you know, so I did have to go buy a screwdriver set for this.
Yeah, this seems weird that you have to, like, undo screws to replace it. Yeah.
To be fair, we did need a better screwdriver set here, so it was a practical thing I kind of needed anyway, but it is kind of funny to have to do that. I had to take trips to 3 separate stores to get SD card system and screwdriver set, and then bring it home and do surgery on my bed with this thing. Yeah. But no. So, you know, and I'm happy with it. I got my 32 gig micro SD card in there, and so that's twice what I had before, so I don't think I would ever need to upgrade again. And if you can, that part of it at least is easy. You just drag it to your computer and switch, and that is the one nice thing of their kind of draconian DRM rules.
I don't even know if draconian is like, it's just like crazy, just nonsensical.
It is. Like, it doesn't matter for the 3DS because you're not probably going to own multiple of a portable system. But it would be totally reasonable maybe to have 2 Wii U's at home and work or something.
Yeah.
If you're like the people at Rooster Teeth or Giant Bomb or something like that.
Yeah, or even like, you know, if you're like, I don't know, a kid whose like parents are divorced or something.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
Like, people living in multiple places for long periods of time is not an uncommon thing.
No, and that's, if you buy a game digitally, it's locked to that system and you would have to just carry it around with you.
Yeah.
And that's crazy in this day and age, and who knows, but whatever. You know, the 3DS is still, I think I've said my piece on the 3DS before. I think it's a really great system. This more than ever. The games look better on this. I should say it's got improved like contrast and color and lighting, so that's nice. They play better. Oh, there's the new row of shoulder buttons, and the existing shoulder buttons feel so much clickier and springier and nice, so that's great. And I don't have any games yet that use the new row, but 1, they're not intrusive, 2, they're easy to use, and if a game wants to use them, that'll be a nice thing. So it's a really nice addition. This is so clearly the best version they made of this so far. If you own a 3DS or 3DS XL, I think it depends on how much you use that system. If you want nicer 3D, if you feel like you would like a system that feels a little more kind of adult in its design, and it doesn't have as much give, and it plays nicer. If you want all those things, I think it's worth an upgrade. At $200, I think it's a fair price. You can sell yours.
It's not crazy expensive.
No. I was able to sell my old 3DS for $100, and that's great. I actually bought my old 3DS for $100, sold it for $100, came out technically not paying for it. That was nice. After years of investment and all this other stuff. But anyway.
Paid for it with your life, Jonathan. The time you've spent.
Right.
The cost you can never get back.
And if you haven't owned a 3DS yet, this is the one to get. And I think there's every reason in the world to get a 3DS. It's a really nice system with a very mature library of games now. It's not going away anytime soon. It's clearly very well supported and will be for the foreseeable future. Yeah. And it's got a huge library of games. Even if you're going back to the DS catalog that it can play all that, the Virtual Console is pretty robust on it by now with NES and Game Boy Color games. So, you know, it's a great system. And I mean, this is one of the only systems on the market right now that has like 2 or 3 or 4 games, each of which I would recommend the console on that game's basis alone. Mm-hmm. It's got that many, that's a system seller, that's a system seller. So it's a really nice, mature platform at this point that isn't going to be going away, you know, next year. So you can feel confident getting it. So that would be my recommendation so far. I really like it. Maybe I'll talk about it more after I've had more time with it. But I've been playing a lot of 3DS this last week, and it's in part just because I want to use this system. It's really fun, and it makes playing the games better, which is what a hardware upgrade should do.
Yes.
So speaking of the 3DS, I want to end the show right now with an addendum to a piece of information we gave earlier. So we talked about Fire Emblem If, the new game. While we were recording this, new information came out about the game from...
Breaking news!
From Nintendo of Japan. Now, very important to note, Nintendo of America is staying mum on all of this, including the title of the game. It's coming out here in 2016, but I think Nintendo of America is probably going to handle the launch differently because in Japan, there are 4 versions of Fire Emblem If you can buy.
That's a lot of versions.
They're very different. This is not like one comes with
Fire Emblem Red, Blue, Yellow, and Green.
That's actually not a joke. That is what it's like. That is what it's like. So, I said before there are 2 campaigns you can choose.
Yes.
They're 2 different games.
Oh.
It is, yeah. So there's the main 2 versions that you would buy boxed is Fire Emblem If, the one country version, and the other country version. So, and I think the early chapters, kind of like Sacred Stones back in the day, are the same, and then it branches at like chapter 5.
Okay, yeah.
So they start the same, but then they branch, and if you buy one version, you can't play the other campaign. Now, with that, you can buy as DLC the other campaign to play with your game if you buy a boxed copy. So that's how that'll work. Then there is a boxed special edition that will allow you to play both and will come with a 3rd campaign DLC that I don't think is coming out right away, but will come out sometime down the line. And you'll have access to all of those with the special edition. The 4th version is a downloadable only version that will give you access to both campaigns. And the information I got was unclear. I don't know if it locks one of them off after you choose it and you have to buy it as DLC, or it gives you both, but then the 3rd piece of DLC is additional later on. But that's the situation. There's only one easy way to get the game and get all of the game. Now, I really doubt Nintendo of America is going to release it that way. I think they're probably just going to do the one version with both campaigns.
Probably, yeah.
Because, and if you know about Nintendo's business structure, Nintendo of America is a very different just company overall. Yeah. It's managed differently. They make different choices. It's part of why you see some games on Virtual Console in Japan or Europe and not here yet. Metroid Zero Mission on GBA. Why do we not have it yet? That's stupid. Anyway, and I doubt
Paper Mario, motherfucker.
That's true. That's true. Gotta be thankful for what you get, right? But anyway, I really doubt Nintendo of America would try something that much of a marketing nightmare.
Yeah.
But for Japan, this is interesting. This is like a Pokemon thing, only kind of bigger than that.
Yeah, even more drastic, because with Pokemon, it was just that, some of the Pokemon are different. It's mostly the exact same experience, you know?
Yeah. And this is interesting to me because this is not a totally new thing to Fire Emblem. Like, playing the bad side is different, but, go back to Sacred Stones on the GBA. That has Ephraim and the Erica, and you can choose which one you want to play as, and they're fairly different campaigns. I played as Ephraim, and I want to go back someday and play as Erica, because it's a cool character. Mm-hmm. And then in the original Fire Emblem for the GBA, the original one that came out here at least, you play through it once as just one campaign, but then you can go back and play a version of the campaign from a different character's perspective, which has new chapters and stuff. So this is not a new thing, but it would be crazy if Sacred Stones was 2 different cartridges you had to get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was the same, and then you split off. Yeah, that's weird.
And I can kind of see where they're coming from, because Fire Emblem Awakening had a pretty robust DLC catalog. I haven't gotten into it yet because there's just so much of it. But it's part of what helped them stay afloat. I mean, if you don't know the history, they were prepared for Awakening to be the last game because sales had been declining, and then it did really spectacularly well. So the series is alive and kicking, and I think they're probably heightening some of those things. But yeah, especially knowing the price of Japanese games, I would not want to be a Fire Emblem fan in Japan right now.
Yeah, that seems really weird. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what the level, how long each of the campaigns are, if it feels like it's basically 2 different games, or...
And it very well could, because, alright, they branch at chapter 5 or 6, and Fire Emblem games are 25 chapters, plus probably 25 side chapters.
Yeah.
It totally could be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting.
Here's my other theory.
Okay.
I think the game is too big for one cart.
Probably. I think that's what's happening. As you just mentioned,
because I think the carts have gotten too big. Fire Emblem Awakening also is clearly compressed in some ways. If they are 2 different campaigns and they're significantly different enough, it's probably they just can't fit them on one cartridge.
Yeah, that actually makes sense. Especially with the fact that the way they're handling it is that you can download the other one as DLC. That makes a lot of sense that it would be the cartridge thing. This is just using the DLC method to get around the cartridge limit, basically.
And the special edition probably comes with 2 cartridges.
Probably.
Or a DLC code. That's probably what the special edition is. Yeah. Is it's got the one cartridge, and you pick which one, but it just has one limited, and you have to download the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. it's kind of like when we got late in the 360 and PS3 era where people had to be really creative with how they were using that disk space.
Yeah, it's like stuff with like Grand Theft Auto 5 or Halo 4 that's like you have the installed disc and you're like, what the fuck is this? This is like, this is 1999 and I'm playing a PC game? What is going on here?
It's like when my dad would play Riven and he had 5 discs he had to interchange all the time.
Like, do you want to do the full installation or like the half installation? You have to put in the cinematics disc? It's like, what?
So, I mean, the bottom line is, if you're like me and at this point you mainly buy your 3DS games digitally, I don't think it'll be a headache.
Yeah, that seems like, if you're all digital, it seems like that's not really an issue.
But it's really interesting. This is a fairly unprecedented thing to be doing with a major game.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and now we know why it's called Fire Emblem If
you want one, or if you want the other.
Yeah, can't have both, unless you give us lots and lots of money. Yeah. God, I wonder how much that would be in Japan to get all that content. Upwards of $100 probably, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
God, because 3DS games are like $70 in Japan. It's crazy. Yeah. Japanese teenagers, that's why in Persona 4 he's got to have all the jobs.
That's why it's called Fire Emblem If. Is for the Japanese, it's Fire Emblem. If only I had enough money.
All right, Sean, I think that's it for this week. Nice long show. A couple of things on the outline we'll leave for next time. And when we get back at you next week, we were going to be talking, finally, about Persona 3, the movie number 2, Midsummer Night's Motherfucking Dream.
Yes. Motherfucking is your editorial. That's not actually in the title.
It's going to be good. Igus is on the cover, so you know it's going to be great.
Yes. The best character of anything ever.
Yes.
Yes.